At 2:11 a.m., Damien Vale's phone shattered 8 months of silence with 3 words that stopped his heart. I'm in labor. The voice belonged to the woman he'd publicly destroyed to keep her alive, Tessa Hart, his ex-wife. The baby was his. But before he could respond, Tessa whispered the words that turned his blood to ice. There are 2 men outside my door, and they're not leaving. Damien grabbed his gun, dialed his sister Vera, and ran for the door, realizing the brutal truth. Divorcing her hadn't saved her life. It had only delayed the reckoning. If you're hooked, stay until the end to see how this night changes everything. Drop a like and comment what city you're watching from so I can see how far this story travels. Now, let's begin. The call came at 2:11 a.m. on a Thursday in late September, and Damien Vale had been awake when it happened. He was always awake at this hour. Sleep had become a luxury he couldn't afford. Not since the divorce, not since he'd signed papers that tore his life in half and walked away from the only woman who'd ever made him believe he could be something other than what his last name demanded. The penthouse was dark except for the glow of his laptop screen. Financial reports he wasn't actually reading, blurring across his vision as his mind did what it did every night, circled back to her. Tessa. 8 months. 243 days since he'd stood in that courthouse and watched her sign her name with shaking hands. Her face pale and her eyes wet with tears, she refused to let fall in front of the cameras. 243 days since he'd walked out without looking back, because looking back would have broken him, and broken men didn't survive in his world. His phone vibrated against the glass desktop, the screen lighting up with a number he'd memorized but never saved. His hand moved before his brain caught up, swiping to answer before the second ring finished. Damien. Her voice was strained, breathless, and underneath it he heard something that made his chest constrict. Pain. Real, physical pain that she was trying and failing to hide. I'm in labor. The world tilted. Damien was on his feet, the chair crashing backward onto imported marble. Where are you? My apartment. Damien, listen to me. She broke off, and he heard her breathing change, heard the small, involuntary sound she made when another contraction hit. When she spoke again, her voice was lower, urgent. There are 2 men outside my door. They've been there for 20 minutes. They're not moving. They're not talking. They're just waiting. Ice flooded his veins. What floor are you on? 3rd. Damien, the baby, is mine. He was already moving, grabbing his keys, his weapon, his phone. I know, Tessa. I've always known. Silence on her end, broken only by her ragged breathing. Then, you knew? We'll talk about it later. Right now I need you to lock every door and window. Don't open for anyone who isn't me. I'm 10 minutes out. Damien, 10 minutes, I promise. He ended the call and immediately dialed his sister. Vera Vale answered on the first ring, her voice sharp and alert despite the hour. What's wrong? Tessa's in labor. There are men at her door. Damien hit the elevator call button 3 times, knowing it wouldn't make it arrive faster, but needing to do something with the adrenaline flooding his system. I need you to pull every camera feed within 2 blocks of her building and send me a count. I need to know what I'm walking into. On it. Damien? Vera paused, and he heard keys clicking in the background. The divorce was fake, wasn't it? Later, V. You're going to have a lot of laters to explain when this is over. Only if we both survive tonight. The elevator doors opened and Damien stepped inside, checking his weapon as the car plummeted toward the parking garage. His reflection stared back at him from the mirrored walls, dark hair disheveled from running his hands through it, gray eyes hard with the kind of focus that had kept him alive in a world that ate weak men for breakfast, jaw set in the expression his father used to call the Vale look. The look that said someone was about to have a very bad night. Tonight, that someone wasn't going to be Tessa. His phone buzzed with a text from Vera. 4 men total. 2 at her door. 2 in a black sedan across the street. No plates visible. They've been stationary for 23 minutes. Damien texted back as he reached his car. Can you loop the exterior cameras when I arrive? Already queued. You'll have a 90-second window. Make it count. He threw the car into gear and tore out of the garage, the city blurring past his windows as he pushed the engine past every legal limit. 10 minutes. He'd told her 10 minutes, but he was going to make it in 7. His mind raced faster than the car. Men at her door meant someone knew about the baby. Someone knew it was his. And if they knew that, they knew the divorce had been a performance, which meant the threat that had forced his hand 8 months ago was still active, still hunting. He'd thought divorcing her would work. He'd thought the public humiliation, the tabloid headlines, the leaked evidence of his infidelity that his team had fabricated, the photos of him with other women that had made Tessa look like a fool for ever trusting him, would convince his enemies that she meant nothing to him anymore, that she was collateral damage he'd already written off. He'd been wrong. The apartment building came into view, and Damien killed his headlights, coasting to a stop 2 blocks away. His phone buzzed. Camera loop active in 10, 9, 8. Damien moved. He crossed the distance in a dead sprint, weapon drawn, mind cataloging every detail. The black sedan was exactly where Vera said it would be, windows tinted, engine running. 2 shapes visible in the front seats. The building's main entrance was glass and chrome, unlocked because the night doorman was conspicuously absent from his post. That absence told him everything he needed to know. Damien slipped inside and took the stairs 3 at a time, his breath steady despite the climb, despite the fear trying to claw its way up his throat. 3rd floor. Apartment 3C. He'd memorized the address from the private investigator reports he'd commissioned and then immediately shredded, unable to stop himself from knowing where she was, even as he'd forced himself not to go to her. He reached the 3rd floor landing and paused, listening. 2 men stood outside Tessa's door, exactly as she'd described. Both were large, both were armed, shoulder holsters visible under poorly fitted jackets, and both looked bored, like this was just another Thursday night assignment. Damien didn't give them time to look less bored. He moved like his father had trained him to move, fast, silent, and without hesitation. The first man went down with Damien's weapon pressed to the base of his skull before he registered the threat. The second turned, hand moving toward his holster, but Damien was faster. A strike to the throat, a knee to the solar plexus, and the man crumpled. "Who sent you?" Damien's voice was conversational as he zip-tied both men's wrists behind their backs, patting them down and removing 2 guns, 4 knives, and 3 phones. Neither man answered. "Fine. We'll do this later." Damien pocketed their weapons and knocked on Tessa's door, keeping his voice low. "Tessa, it's me." The lock clicked immediately. The door opened and there she was, Tessa Hart, the woman he'd married in a private ceremony 2 years ago. The woman he'd publicly divorced 8 months ago. The woman he'd loved every single day in between and after. She was barefoot, wearing an oversized sweater that didn't hide how round her belly had become, her dark hair pulled back in a messy knot, her face pale and damp with sweat. She was the most beautiful thing he'd ever seen. Damien. His name broke on her lips, and then she was in his arms, shaking. He held her carefully, aware of every breath she took, every tremor that ran through her body. "I've got you," he said against her hair. "I've got you, and I'm not letting go." She pulled back enough to look at him, her amber eyes searching his face. "You knew about the baby?" "Not until 3 months ago. I had you followed." He saw her expression change and rushed on. "Not to spy on you, to protect you. The surveillance picked up your doctor's appointment. Tessa, we don't have time for this conversation right now. We need to move." "I can't." She gripped his arm as another contraction hit, her whole body going rigid. "Damien, I can't. The contractions are 4 minutes apart. I'm not going to make it to a hospital." He'd expected this. He'd planned for this. In the 3 hours since he'd gotten the first alert from his surveillance team that suspicious activity had been flagged near her building. "We're not going to a hospital." Damien helped her back into the apartment, grabbing the bag she'd clearly packed and left by the door. Another sign she'd been preparing for this moment, expecting trouble. "I have a doctor, private, off the books. No records, no trail." "Off the books?" Tessa's voice rose slightly. "Damien, I'm having a baby, not getting a bullet removed." Dr. Riley Cross, Yale Medical School, top of her class. 10 years in obstetrics, before she decided she preferred patients who paid in cash and didn't ask questions. Damien was already moving, supporting Tessa's weight as they headed for the service stairs. "She's expecting us. She has a clinic set up in a secure location 30 minutes from here." 30 minutes? Tessa stopped, breathing hard. "I don't have 30 minutes." "Then we're going to make it in 20. Damien lifted her into his arms, ignoring her protest. Put your arms around my neck and hold on. The men outside handled Damien, Tessa. He looked down at her, and for the first time in 8 months, he let her see everything he'd been hiding, the fear, the rage, the desperation, the love that had never diminished despite the divorce papers, despite the distance, despite everything he'd done to convince the world she meant nothing to him. I will get you and our baby somewhere safe, or I will die trying. Those are the only 2 options. Now hold on. She held on. They took the service stairs down to the basement parking garage where Damien had already positioned his car during the camera loop. He got Tessa settled in the passenger seat, reclined as far as it would go, and threw her bag in the back before sliding behind the wheel. His phone rang as he started the engine. Vera. Talk to me, Damien said, putting her on speaker as he pulled out of the garage. You've got company. The sedan just came alive. 2 motorcycles appeared from the north side. They're mobilizing. How long do I have? They'll realize you're gone in about 90 seconds. Then they'll know which direction you're heading based on traffic patterns. Damien, this is coordinated. Someone has resources. I know. Damien took a corner too fast, his free hand reaching over to steady Tessa as she gripped the door handle. Send the route to Riley. Tell her we're coming in hot, and she needs to have everything ready. Already done. There's something else. Vera's voice dropped. I ran the faces through our database. The men at Tessa's door, they're contractors. They work for Konstantin Sokolov. The name hit Damien like a physical blow. Konstantin Sokolov, Russian arms dealer, human trafficker, and the man who'd sent him a file 8 months ago containing photographs of Tessa at the grocery store, at her office, getting coffee, completely unaware she was being watched. The file had included a single typed note: sign the papers or she disappears. Damien had signed the papers. Apparently, Sokolov didn't consider their arrangement complete. Sokolov, Tessa whispered from the passenger seat. Her eyes were closed, one hand pressed to her belly, but she'd clearly heard. That's the name. That's who you were protecting me from. Not now, Damien said, but she grabbed his arm. Yes, now. Damien, I deserve to know why you destroyed our marriage. I destroyed our marriage to keep you alive. The words came out harder than he'd intended, 8 months of suppressed rage bleeding through. Sokolov gave me a choice: divorce you publicly and humiliate you so thoroughly that no one would believe you meant anything to me, or wake up one morning and find you gone. No body, no trace, just gone. So yes, I signed the papers. I leaked fake evidence of affairs. I let the world think I was a bastard who'd used you and thrown you away. And it was supposed to work, Tessa. It was supposed to make you invisible to him. But it didn't. No, it didn't. Tessa was quiet for a moment. Her breathing labored as another contraction built. When it passed, she opened her eyes and looked at him. You should have told me. And let you try to fight? Let you argue? Sokolov doesn't negotiate, Tessa. He doesn't compromise. Men like him don't see women as people. They see them as leverage. I couldn't risk... You couldn't risk trusting me, she finished. You couldn't risk letting me make my own choice. I couldn't risk losing you. Damien's hands tightened on the wheel. I still can't. His phone buzzed with a message from Vera. Motorcycles broke off pursuit. Sedan still following at distance. They're tracking you but not intercepting. Why? Damien's jaw clenched as understanding dawned. They're not trying to stop us. They're following us to see where we go. They want the location. Of the clinic, Tessa said. They want to know where I'm vulnerable. They're not going to get that far. Damien made a decision and took the next exit, heading away from the clinic and toward the industrial district on the east side. Change of plans. Vera, I need you to contact Riley and tell her to meet us at the secondary location. The warehouse? Vera's voice was sharp with concern. Damien, that's not set up for... It's set up for security, and that's what we need right now. Riley can work with what we have. Make the call. He ended the connection before Vera could argue and glanced at Tessa. There's a secure building 20 minutes from here. It's not pretty, but it's safe, and Riley will have everything she needs. Everything except a sterile surgical suite, Tessa managed, her voice strained. Riley's delivered babies in worse conditions. Trust me. I did trust you. Tessa's eyes found his in the darkness of the car. And then you shattered that trust in front of the entire world. I know. Do you? She shifted in her seat, one hand gripping the door handle as another contraction rolled through her. Do you know what it felt like to see those photos? To have reporters camped outside my office asking me how it felt to be replaced? To have my mother call me crying because she'd seen the headlines? Damien's throat tightened. Tessa, you made me look like a fool, Damien. You made me look weak. You have never been weak. He risked a glance at her, needing her to see the truth in his eyes. Everything I did to keep you alive. I would do it again. Even knowing it didn't work? Even knowing Sokolov is still hunting me? Especially knowing that, because for 8 months you were safe. For 8 months you lived your life without looking over your shoulder. That was worth every lie, every photograph, every headline. Tessa was quiet for a long moment, her hand pressed to her belly. When she finally spoke, her voice was softer. I was never safe, Damien. I was pregnant and alone and terrified that you'd actually stopped loving me. That everything we'd had was nothing. It was everything. The admission came out raw. It is everything. Tessa, I have loved you since the moment you walked into my office 3 years ago and told me my business practices were morally bankrupt. I loved you when I married you. I loved you when I signed those papers. And I love you now, even though I have no right to say it after what I've done. Another contraction hit before she could respond. This one strong enough that she cried out, her whole body curling forward. Damien pressed harder on the accelerator, the warehouse looming in the distance. Almost there, he said. Tessa, look at me. Almost there. Her eyes were squeezed shut, her breathing rapid and shallow. Damien, I need to push. Not yet. We're 2 minutes out. Can you give me 2 minutes? I don't... She broke off, gasping. I don't think the baby cares about your timeline. Despite everything, despite the danger, despite the fear, despite the 8 months of hell they'd both endured, Damien almost smiled. That's my girl, stubborn from the start. Your girl? Always my girl? The warehouse appeared ahead, a nondescript gray building surrounded by a chain-link fence. The gate was already open, Vera's work, and Damien pulled into the loading bay where Riley Cross stood waiting, medical bag in hand and an expression of professional calm on her face that didn't quite hide her concern. Riley was in her early 40s, dark-skinned with silver threading through her black hair, and she'd delivered more babies in unusual circumstances than most obstetricians saw in a decade. She was also one of the few people Damien trusted with Tessa's life. How far apart? Riley asked as Damien helped Tessa out of the car. 3 minutes, Tessa managed. Maybe less. I need to... I know. Riley took Tessa's other arm, supporting her weight as they moved into the warehouse. I've got a suite set up in the back. It's not a hospital, but it's clean and it's private. That's what matters right now. The suite turned out to be a cordoned-off section of the warehouse that Riley had transformed into a functional medical space. A proper bed with stirrups, monitoring equipment, IV stands, and enough medical supplies to handle any complication Damien could imagine, and several he didn't want to. How did you... Tessa started to ask, but another contraction cut her off. I've been preparing for 3 months, Riley said, helping Tessa onto the bed. Ever since Damien called me and said he might need a discreet obstetrics team on standby. Now, let's see where we are. Damien stood by the door, feeling useless and out of place as Riley worked. Tessa's hand shot out, reaching for him. Don't, she said when he started to step back. Don't leave. He crossed to her immediately, taking her hand and letting her squeeze hard enough that his bones creaked. I'm not going anywhere. Riley glanced up from her examination, her expression neutral. You're at 8 centimeters. We're having a baby tonight. Tonight? Tessa's voice rose. Riley, it's already 3 in the morning. Then we're having a baby this morning. Riley's tone was calm, professional, grounding. This is good, Tessa. This is normal. Your body knows what to do. My body feels like it's being torn in half, Tessa gasped. Also normal. Riley began setting up the monitoring equipment, attaching sensors to Tessa's belly. Damien, I need you to keep her calm and focused. Talk to her. Remind her to breathe. Damien had faced down armed men. He'd negotiated with criminals who would kill him without hesitation. He'd built an empire in a world that rewarded ruthlessness and punished weakness. None of it had prepared him for this. for watching Tessa in pain and being unable to fix it. Breathe, he said, feeling inadequate even as he said it. Tessa, breathe with me. Don't. She gripped his hand tighter. Don't tell me to breathe. Tell me something real. Something real? Tell me why you really called me. 8 months of silence, and then tonight you show up like... Another contraction stole her words. Damien waited until it passed, his thumb stroking the back of her hand. I never stopped watching. I had a team monitoring your building, your routes, everything. 3 hours ago, they flagged unusual activity, vehicles that didn't belong, men who were clearly surveillance. I was already mobilizing when you called. You were watching me for 8 months? Every single day. That's... Tessa struggled to find the word. That's disturbing. That's love. Damien met her eyes. Disturbing, invasive, probably illegal love, but love nonetheless. Riley made a sound that might have been a laugh. Your relationship is deeply unhealthy and also somehow romantic. I haven't decided which wins yet. Can we discuss our unhealthy relationship after I'm not actively in labor? Tessa's voice was strained, and Damien saw the monitor spike with another contraction. Focus on my voice, he said, leaning closer. Tessa, focus right here. Her eyes locked on his, amber meeting gray, and for a moment the rest of the world fell away. There was just this, her hand in his, her breathing synchronizing with his, the life they'd created about to enter a world that was dangerous and uncertain and completely unprepared for how fiercely they would both protect it. I'm scared, Tessa whispered. Me too. You're never scared. I'm terrified. Damien pressed his forehead to hers. I'm terrified I'm going to fail you, that I'm going to fail our baby, that Sokolov is going to find us and take everything I love. But I'm here, and I'm not running, and I will burn down the entire world before I let anyone hurt either of you. Riley cleared her throat. That's very sweet and also mildly concerning. Tessa, we're at 9 centimeters. The next phase is going to be intense. More intense than this. Significantly. Damien's phone buzzed in his pocket. He ignored it. It buzzed again and again. Answer it, Tessa said. It might be important. You're more important. Damien. He pulled out the phone and saw a string of messages from Vera, each more urgent than the last. The final one made his blood run cold. Camera feed compromised. Someone is watching. He showed the message to Riley, keeping his expression neutral so Tessa wouldn't panic. Riley's eyes widened fractionally, but she nodded and continued working. What is it? Tessa asked, reading his face. Nothing we can't handle. Damien typed a quick response to Vera. Lock it down. Find the source. The reply came instantly. Already trying. They're good. Really good. Medical records were accessed too. Someone pulled Tessa's entire pregnancy file from her OB's patient portal. Damien's jaw clenched. Someone had been tracking Tessa's pregnancy from the beginning. Someone had known exactly when she was due, exactly when she would be most vulnerable. Someone had planned this. He looked up, and his eyes caught on something he should have noticed immediately, a small black device mounted in the corner of the ceiling, partially hidden by the industrial vent, but still visible if you knew what to look for. A camera. His hand moved to his weapon even as his mind raced through the implications. The warehouse was supposed to be secure. Riley had set it up personally, which meant either Riley had been compromised or someone had accessed the location after she'd prepared it. Riley, Damien said carefully, his eyes not leaving the camera. When did you last check this room? 2 hours ago. Why? Look at the ceiling, northwest corner. Riley followed his gaze and her professional calm cracked for just a second. That wasn't there before. Someone's been in here. Damien was already moving, phone in hand, typing rapidly to Vera. Cameras in the clinic space. Find out who placed it and when. Damien, what's happening? Tessa's voice was tight with pain and now fear. We're leaving. Damien helped her sit up, but Riley put a hand on his arm. She's at 9 centimeters. Moving her now could be dangerous. Staying here when someone is watching is more dangerous. I can't, Tessa gasped as another contraction hit. Damien, I can't move, I can't. The camera in the corner blinked, a red LED that hadn't been active before suddenly glowing in the darkness. Someone was watching them right now. Damien's phone rang. Unknown number. He answered it anyway, knowing what was coming. "Hello, Mr. Vale." The voice was accented, Russian, and horribly familiar. Konstantin Sokolov. "I see you found my gift." Sokolov. Damien's voice was flat, emotionless, even as rage burned through every nerve. "This ends tonight." "Oh, I agree completely. Tell me, how is your lovely wife? I understand she's about to give me leverage I've only dreamed of. A child. Your child, the heir to the Vale Empire, born to a woman you supposedly divorced. Imagine the headlines. You're not getting near her." "I don't need to get near her, Mr. Vale. I'm already there. I've been there for months. Did you really think I believed your performance? The divorce, the affairs, the public humiliation?" Sokolov laughed, low and cruel. "I knew you loved her the moment you tried to hide her from me. Love makes men predictable, and predictable men make mistakes. What do you want? Everything you have, your business, your assets, your reputation, and in exchange, I'll let your family live. You have 12 hours to transfer control to the accounts I'm sending you now, or I will make sure neither Tessa nor your child survive the morning." The line went dead. Damien stared at the phone, every muscle in his body coiled tight with the need to destroy something, to fight something, to make someone pay for putting that fear in Tessa's eyes. "We need to move," he said. "Now." "She's crowning," Riley said flatly. "Damien, the baby is coming. We have minutes, not hours. We can't move her." "Then we defend this position." Damien was already on the phone with Vera. "I need every available body at my location. Full tactical gear. Sokolov is making his move tonight." "On it. Damien," Vera paused. "The camera feed. It's not just watching. It's recording. Someone is documenting this." "For what purpose?" "Leverage, blackmail, or..." Vera's voice dropped. "Or they're planning to broadcast it. Show the world that Damien Vale's secret wife is having his secret baby. Destroy your credibility, destroy your power base, all in one move." Damien looked at Tessa, who was gripping the bed rails, her face contorted with pain, completely vulnerable and trusting him to keep her safe. He'd failed her once by pushing her away. He wouldn't fail her again. "Cut the feed," he told Vera. "Jam everything within a mile radius. I don't care if we go dark. No one is broadcasting this." "Already done. You have 90 seconds before they realize we've blocked them." Damien ended the call and crossed to Tessa, taking her hand. "Listen to me. We're going to have this baby right here, right now. Riley's going to deliver, and I'm going to make sure nothing and no one gets through that door. Do you trust me?" Tessa's eyes were wide, frightened, but she nodded. "I trust you." "Then let's meet our daughter." Riley's head snapped up. "Daughter, you know?" "I know everything." Damien's smile was grim. "I've known for 3 months. I just couldn't tell Tessa without revealing I'd been watching her." "You're impossible," Tessa gasped, but there was something almost like affection in her voice. "I'm yours," Damien corrected. "Always have been." "Then stay here," she said, gripping his hand tighter as another contraction built. "Stay right here and don't leave." "Never." Outside, Damien heard the sound of vehicles approaching. Multiple engines, footsteps, the subtle click of weapons being readied. Sokolov's men were already here. The siege had begun. The first shot shattered the warehouse's upper window before Riley could even respond to Damien's declaration. Glass rained down in glittering fragments, the sound of the impact echoing through the cavernous space like a warning bell. Damien's hand went to his weapon instantly, his body shifting to shield Tessa even as Riley continued working with the kind of focused calm that came from years of high-pressure deliveries. "Don't stop," Damien said to Riley, his eyes scanning the warehouse perimeter. "No matter what happens, you don't stop." "Wasn't planning on it," Riley replied, her hands steady as she adjusted the monitoring equipment. "Tessa, I need you to push with the next contraction. Your baby's ready, even if the timing is spectacularly terrible." Tessa's laugh came out half sob, half hysteria. "Story of my life." Damien's phone lit up with a message from Vera. 6 vehicles, minimum 12 hostiles. They're surrounding the building. ETA on our people is 8 minutes. 8 minutes might as well have been 8 hours. Damien typed back with one hand while keeping his weapon ready with the other. Delay tactics. I need time. Vera's response was immediate. Already on it, cutting their communications now. Another window shattered, this time on the east side of the warehouse. Damien could hear footsteps on the roof, careful, measured movements that spoke of tactical training. Sokolov hadn't sent amateurs. Damien, Tessa's voice cut through his tactical assessment, raw with pain and fear. I need you here. Not over there planning defense strategies. Here. He crossed back to her immediately, holstering his weapon so he could take her hand with both of his. I'm here. I'm right here. Promise me something. Her eyes locked on his, and even through the pain he could see the fierce determination that had made him fall in love with her in the first place. Promise me that if it comes down to a choice, me or the baby, you choose her. That's not going to happen. Damien, that's not going to happen because I'm not losing either of you. He leaned closer, his voice dropping so only she could hear. I have spent 8 months in hell without you. I have lived every single day knowing I pushed away the best thing that ever happened to me. I am not going to lose you now, Tessa. Not to Sokolov, not to complications, not to anything. So you're going to push, and Riley's going to deliver our daughter, and I'm going to make sure no one gets through that door. That's the only plan I'm accepting. Tessa opened her mouth to argue, but another contraction hit, and the words transformed into a cry of pain that cut Damien deeper than any bullet ever had. That's it, Riley encouraged, her voice steady and sure. That's perfect, Tessa. Again. Push again. The sound of boots on metal echoed from somewhere above them. They were in the ventilation system, Damien realized. Coming in from above because the ground entrances were too exposed. Smart, dangerous, and exactly what he would have done. His phone buzzed. Vera. They're in the vents. Northwest quadrant. You have maybe 2 minutes before they reach your position. Damien looked at the vent directly above the medical suite. The same vent where the camera had been hidden. Of course. They'd planned this. Probably had blueprints of the entire building, knew every entrance and exit, every vulnerable point. Riley, he said quietly. How long? Minutes. Maybe 5 if everything goes smoothly. We don't have 5 minutes. Then we'll make do with what we have. Riley didn't look up from her work, her hands moving with practiced efficiency. Tessa, the head is crowning. You're doing amazing. 2 more big pushes and we're going to meet your daughter. Damien heard the scrape of metal on metal, the vent cover being removed. He drew his weapon and fired 3 shots directly into the vent opening. A cry of pain, a heavy thud, and then silence. One down, he muttered. Did you just shoot someone while I'm actively giving birth? Tessa's voice was strained but incredulous. I'm multitasking. You're insane. I'm motivated. Damien fired another shot as a second figure appeared in the vent opening. This time he heard the body fall all the way down, hitting the warehouse floor somewhere in the darkness beyond their lit medical area. His phone rang. Sokolov. Damien almost didn't answer, but something made him swipe to accept. He put it on speaker. Resourceful, Sokolov said, and Damien could hear the smile in his voice. But ultimately futile. You can kill a few of my men, Mr. Vale, but you can't protect your family and fight at the same time. Eventually, you'll have to choose. Then you don't know me very well. On the contrary, I know you perfectly. I know that you're a man who built an empire on careful calculation and strategic ruthlessness. I know that you avoid emotional entanglements because they create vulnerabilities. And yet here you are, vulnerable because you love them. Both of them. Damien's jaw clenched. Get to the point. The point is simple. Step outside. Surrender yourself and your assets. In exchange, I let them live. Your wife. Your daughter. They get to walk away and you get to know they're safe. Isn't that what you wanted when you divorced her? To keep her safe? I wanted her away from you, Damien corrected. There's a difference. And yet here we are, full circle. Sokolov's voice hardened. You have 60 seconds to decide. After that, I stop asking nicely. The line went dead. Tessa was staring at him, her face pale and damp with sweat, her hand gripping his so tightly he could feel his bones grinding together. Don't, she said. Damien, don't you dare. I'm not going anywhere. You're thinking about it. I can see you thinking about it. I'm thinking about how to kill everyone between us and freedom, Damien corrected. He looked at Riley. How long? One more push, maybe two. Tessa, I need everything you have left. The warehouse's main door exploded inward with a concussive blast that shook the entire building. Damien moved instantly, positioning himself between the entrance and Tessa, weapon raised. Smoke billowed through the opening, and through it he could see shapes moving, at least 6 men, all armed, all advancing. Vera, he shouted into his phone. Where the hell is my backup? 4 minutes out. Damien, hold position. 4 minutes. Damien could hold for 4 minutes. He'd held worse positions with worse odds. The first man through the smoke took 2 rounds to the chest and went down. The second was smarter, using cover, but Damien had the advantage of knowing the warehouse layout. He fired at an angle, the bullet ricocheting off a steel beam and catching the man in the shoulder. Damien! Riley's voice cut through the gunfire. The baby's coming! Now! He couldn't turn around, couldn't take his eyes off the advancing hostiles, but he could hear Tessa's cry of effort and pain, could hear Riley's steady encouragement, could hear the rustle of movement that meant his daughter was about to enter a world where bullets were flying and men were dying. Push, Tessa, Riley commanded. 1 more. She's right there. Damien fired 3 more shots, dropping another attacker and forcing the others back into cover. His magazine was running low. He had 1 spare, maybe 2 if he'd grabbed extras from the car. After that, it was hand to hand, and even he couldn't fight 6 men hand to hand while protecting Tessa and a newborn. And then he heard it, the sound that made everything else, the gunfire, the danger, the fear, completely irrelevant. A baby's cry. Strong, indignant, absolutely furious at being forced into the cold warehouse air. His daughter. She's here, Riley said, and Damien could hear the smile in her voice despite the chaos. Damien, you have a daughter. He risked a glance over his shoulder and saw Riley holding a tiny, squirming bundle. Saw Tessa reaching for the baby with trembling hands. Saw the moment mother and daughter connected for the first time. Tessa was crying, laughing, her face transformed by joy, even as blood and exhaustion painted shadows under her eyes. She's perfect, Tessa whispered. Damien, she's perfect. He wanted to cross to them, wanted to hold his daughter, wanted to kiss his wife, wanted to exist in that moment of pure, perfect joy. But the men advancing through the warehouse wouldn't give him that. Sokolov wouldn't give him that. So he turned back to the fight and made a decision. Riley, he said, his voice deadly calm. Is Tessa stable? Yes, but she needs... Take them to the car. Back exit. Southeast corner. Vera will have it clear. Damien ejected his spent magazine and slammed in a fresh one. Go now! Damien, what are you... I'm buying you time. He fired twice more, keeping the attackers pinned. Tessa needs a hospital. The baby needs to be checked. I need you to get them both somewhere safe. No. Tessa's voice was weak but absolute. No, Damien, we're not leaving you. You don't have a choice. He still hadn't turned around, couldn't afford to, but he gentled his voice as much as he could while actively in a firefight. Tessa, I need you to trust me one more time. Take our daughter and go. Let me do what I'm good at. Which is what? Getting yourself killed? Surviving. Damien fired 3 more shots in rapid succession. I've been surviving men like Sokolov my entire life. This is what I do. But I can't do it if I'm worried about you and the baby. Please, Tessa. Please go. Riley had already started moving, supporting Tessa as she stood on shaking legs, the baby wrapped in blankets and held against her chest. Tessa's eyes never left Damien. Promise me you'll come back, she said. I promise. Promise me on her life. On our daughter's life. Damien finally turned, meeting her eyes across the warehouse space. I swear on Elena's life that I will come back to you. Elena? Tessa's voice broke. You want to name her Elena? Elena Mayvale, after your grandmother. Damien managed to smile despite everything. We talked about it before, remember? I remember. Tessa was crying freely now, clutching their daughter. I remember everything. Then remember I love you, both of you. Now go. Riley got Tessa moving, half carrying her toward the southeast exit while cradling the baby between them. Damien watched until they disappeared into the shadows, then turned back to face the men who'd invaded his warehouse. Sokolov, he he shouted into the smoke and darkness. Let's talk! The gunfire paused. From somewhere in the smoke, a figure emerged, not Sokolov himself, but a man who carried himself with the confidence of someone very high in the organization. He was tall, blond, wearing tactical gear that probably cost more than most people's cars. Mr. Vale, the man said in accented English, I am Victor. Mr. Sokolov sends his regards. I'm sure he does. Tell him the offer's off the table. My family is gone, which means his leverage disappeared. Victor smiled, and it was the smile of a man who knew something Damien didn't. Your family is not gone, Mr. Vale. They are in a car heading south on Highway 9, being followed by 3 of our vehicles. Did you really think we didn't plan for every contingency? Ice flooded Damien's veins. He pulled out his phone, hands steady despite the fear threatening to choke him, and called Vera. She answered immediately. Damien, we have a problem. 3 vehicles appeared out of nowhere and they're tailing Riley's car. Our people are still 2 minutes out. Can Riley lose them? Not with Tessa in active recovery and a newborn in the car. If she tries any aggressive driving, I know. Damien's mind raced through scenarios, discarding plans as quickly as he formed them. Tell Riley to pull over. What? Tell her to pull over, turn off the engine, and wait. They won't do anything while I'm still here. Damien, trust me. They want me alive to make the transfer. They won't hurt Tessa and Elena while I'm still a viable asset. He ended the call and looked at Victor. New offer. I come with you right now. Cooperate with whatever Sokolov wants, and my family goes free. No tail, no surveillance, nothing. They disappear, and I'll give you everything. Victor appeared to consider this, tilting his head like a predator studying prey. And why would we agree to that when we already have all the leverage we need? Because I'm the only one who can actually execute the transfers. My assets are locked behind biometric security and multi-factor authentication. You can threaten my family all you want, but if I'm dead or uncooperative, you get nothing. 0. Not a single dollar of the Vale Empire. We could force you. You could try. Damien's smile was cold. But I've been trained to resist interrogation since I was 14 years old. My father believed in thorough preparation. How long do you think Sokolov wants to wait while you try to break me? Days? Weeks? How much is he paying you and your men to sit around hoping I'll crack? Victor's eyes narrowed. You're bluffing. Call Sokolov and ask him if he wants to risk it. Damien holstered his weapon slowly, hands visible, non-threatening. I'm offering you the easy way. I'll come quietly, I'll cooperate, and in exchange my family lives free. Everyone wins except me, and frankly, I stopped caring about my own survival the moment I heard my daughter cry. For a long moment, Victor didn't move. Then he pulled out his phone and stepped back into the shadows, speaking in rapid Russian. Damien couldn't make out all the words, but he caught enough to know Victor was relaying the offer and waiting for instructions. While he waited, Damien sent a text to Vera with one hand hidden behind his back. Tracking device. In my watch. Follow it. When you get a location, you come in hard and you don't leave anyone standing. Vera's response, Damien, that's a suicide mission. That's a rescue mission. Just be ready. Victor emerged from the shadows, phone lowered. Mr. Sokolov agrees to your terms with one condition. Your wife signs a document stating the divorce was legitimate, the child is not yours, and she has no claim to your estate. Then she disappears. Damien's jaw clenched so hard he thought his teeth might crack. No. Then we kill her now and take our chances with you. You kill her and I'll die before I give you a single piece of information. Damien's voice was flat, absolute. You seem to think I'm negotiating from weakness. I'm not. You need me alive and cooperative. I don't need anything except to know Tessa and Elena are safe. So here's what's actually going to happen. I come with you. Tessa and the baby go free with no conditions, no documents, no surveillance. If Sokolov doesn't like that, he can come here and tell me himself. Victor stared at him, clearly calculating whether this was worth the fight. Finally, he spoke into his phone again, another rapid exchange in Russian. When he looked back at Damien, his expression had shifted to something like respect. Mr. Sokolov says you are either the bravest man he's ever encountered or the most foolish. He accepts your terms. Your family goes free. You come with us. I want confirmation. I want to hear from Riley that she's clear. Victor made a gesture and one of his men produced a tablet, pulling up a video feed. Damien's heart stuttered when he saw Tessa in the back of Riley's car, holding Elena, both of them alive and apparently unharmed. The three vehicles that had been following were pulling away, disappearing into the night. Riley's voice came through the tablet speaker. Damien, they're leaving. They're leaving. What did you do? What I had to. Damien's eyes never left the screen, drinking in the sight of Tessa and their daughter. Riley, get them somewhere safe. Use the account I set up. There's enough money to disappear if you need to. Damien, no. It's done, Riley. Take care of them. He reached out and ended the feed himself, handing the tablet back to Victor. I'm ready. Hands behind your back. Damien complied, feeling the zip ties bite into his wrists. Two of Victor's men moved forward, patting him down and removing his phone, his backup weapon, everything except his watch, which they examined briefly and then dismissed as just a watch. Good. Vera had done her job well when she'd built the tracker into the mechanism. They marched him out of the warehouse into the pre-dawn darkness. The air was cold, biting, and Damien could see his breath misting in front of him. 3 black SUVs waited in the loading bay, engines running. Where are we going? Damien asked as they pushed him toward the middle vehicle. Somewhere secure. Somewhere Mr. Sokolov can discuss terms without interruption. They shoved him into the back seat between 2 very large men who smelled like cigarettes and violence. Victor took the front passenger seat, turning to look at Damien. For what it's worth, Victor said, I think you made the right choice. Your family is safe. That's what matters. Nothing matters until I know they're actually safe. Not just today, but tomorrow and next week and next year. That will depend entirely on how cooperative you are. The SUV pulled out of the warehouse, joining the other 2 vehicles in a convoy heading north. Damien watched the buildings blur past, his mind already working through every possible scenario. Vera would be tracking him. His backup would be mobilizing. He just needed to survive long enough for them to reach him, and survive long enough to make Sokolov regret ever threatening his family. They drove for 40 minutes, leaving the city behind and heading into increasingly rural territory. The sun was starting to rise, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold that would have been beautiful if Damien weren't zip-tied in the back of an SUV surrounded by armed men. Finally, they turned off the main highway onto a private road that wound through thick forest. At the end of the road sat a large house. Calling it a house was generous. It was practically a compound, all stone and steel and bulletproof glass. Welcome to your new home, Victor said as they pulled up to the front entrance. At least for the next 72 hours. 72 hours? Mr. Sokolov's timeline. You have 3 days to complete the asset transfers. If you cooperate, you walk away. If you don't, Victor shrugged. Well, you're an intelligent man. You understand consequences. They pulled Damien from the SUV and marched him into the house. The interior was surprisingly elegant. Marble floors, expensive art on the walls, furniture that probably cost more than most people's annual salary. It was the house of a man who had money and wanted everyone to know it. Sokolov was waiting in what appeared to be a study, seated behind a massive desk like a king on a throne. He was older than Damien had expected, mid-60s with silver hair and a face that had seen decades of violence and come through it smiling. Mr. Vale, Sokolov said, rising. Finally, we meet face to face. Please, sit. The guards pushed Damien into a chair across from the desk, but didn't remove the zip ties. Sokolov noticed and frowned. Really, Victor? The man just surrendered himself to save his family and we treat him like a common criminal? Sokolov gestured impatiently. Cut him loose. Victor hesitated, then moved forward with a knife, slicing through the zip ties. Damien rubbed his wrists, keeping his expression neutral while his mind cataloged everything in the room that could be used as a weapon. Better? Sokolov asked. Not particularly, but it's a start. Sokolov laughed, genuine amusement lighting his face. I like you, Mr. Vale. You have spine. Most men in your position would be begging by now. Most men in my position would have let their ex-wives handle labor without armed escorts. Touché. Sokolov poured 2 glasses of what looked like very expensive scotch and pushed one across the desk toward Damien. To family, the source of all our weaknesses and all our strengths. Damien didn't touch the glass. Let's talk about why I'm here. Straight to business. I respect that. Sokolov settled back in his chair, swirling his scotch. You have built quite an empire, Mr. Vale. Shipping, logistics, real estate, technology ventures, all legitimate on the surface, all very profitable. But underneath, he smiled, underneath is where the real money flows. The off-book accounts, the shell companies, the deals that never see the light of regulatory oversight. Sounds like you've done your research. I have done more than research. I have spent the last 2 years mapping every single piece of your network, every account, every asset, every vulnerable point. I know your business better than you do. If that were true, you'd know that threatening my family was the worst possible strategy. Sokolov's smile faded. Was it? You're here, aren't you, sitting in my study, ready to negotiate. I would call that a successful strategy. You're assuming I'm here to negotiate. Damien finally picked up the scotch glass, studying the amber liquid. I'm not. I'm here to buy time while people who are far more dangerous than your Victor organize a rescue mission. Yes, your sister Vera. Former intelligence, very skilled, very loyal. I'm quite familiar with her work. Sokolov's expression didn't change. And I have already taken measures to ensure no rescue reaches you. This compound is surrounded by 20 armed guards, state-of-the-art security, and enough firepower to repel a small army. Your sister is good, Mr. Vale. But she's not that good. Damien took a sip of the scotch. It was excellent, smooth and smoky. You're probably right. Vera's not that good, but she doesn't work alone. Your business partners? Your associates in the less legal enterprises? Please, they'll cut you loose the moment it becomes inconvenient to save you. That's how this world works. Maybe your world, not mine. Damien set down the glass. Here's what you don't understand about me, Sokolov. I didn't build my empire on fear or coercion. I built it on loyalty, on trust, on making sure the people who work with me know I'll go to war for them if necessary. So when they find out I've been taken, and they will find out because Vera will make sure they know, they're not going to cut me loose. They're going to come looking. Sokolov studied him for a long moment, then stood and walked to the window overlooking the compound grounds. You have 3 days to transfer 70% of your liquid assets to accounts I control. At the end of those 3 days, regardless of whether you've complied, you go free. That was our agreement. And what happens after I go free? You just let me walk away and rebuild? No. Sokolov turned back to face him. After you go free, you work for me. Your legitimate businesses become pipelines for my operations. Your connections become my connections. You don't rebuild, Mr. Vale. You integrate. You become a part of my organization, and in exchange, your family remains untouched. Forever. Forever is a long time. Forever is exactly as long as you remain useful. Sokolov's smile returned, cold and calculating. I'm offering you a partnership, Mr. Vale. An empire combined with an empire. Think of what we could accomplish together. I'm thinking about how quickly I could kill you if Victor wasn't standing behind me with a gun. Victor shifted slightly, and Damien heard the distinctive sound of a weapon being drawn. Sokolov laughed. Excellent. Spirit. I appreciate spirit. But let's be realistic. You're outnumbered, outgunned, and out of options. Your family is safe because I allow it. Your life continues because I permit it. The sooner you accept this reality, the easier the next 72 hours will be. Damien's phone, which he'd thought they'd confiscated, suddenly buzzed in Victor's pocket. Victor pulled it out, frowning. It's a message, Victor said. From someone named Gideon. Damien's blood ran cold. Gideon Rourke, his fixer, his right hand, the man who'd helped orchestrate the fake divorce and had been managing Vale operations for the past 8 months. What does it say? Sokolov asked. Victor read from the screen, his frown deepening. It says, Damien, I know where you are. I know what Sokolov wants, and I know how to give it to him. Call me. We need to talk. The room went very, very quiet. Damien's mind raced. Gideon knew where he was, which meant either the tracker in his watch was working better than expected, or Gideon had his own sources. But the message, I know how to give it to him, that was concerning on multiple levels. Sokolov moved with surprising speed, crossing the room and snatching the phone from Victor. He read the message himself, then looked at Damien with renewed interest. Gideon Rourke, Sokolov said slowly, your trusted associate, your fixer, the man who knows where all your bodies are buried, literally and figuratively. He smiled. It appears, Mr. Vale, that you have a loyalty problem after all. Damien's expression didn't change, but inside his mind was already 3 moves ahead, calculating possibilities and betrayals. Gideon Rourke had been with him for 7 years. 7 years of loyalty, of handling the dark corners of the Vale Empire that couldn't see daylight, of executing orders without question. 7 years of trust that Damien had apparently misplaced. Call him back, Sokolov said, holding out the phone. Let's hear what Mr. Rourke has to offer. No. Damien's voice was flat. No? Sokolov's eyebrows rose. You're not curious what your most trusted associate wants to discuss? I'm extremely curious. But I'm not making that call with you listening. Whatever Gideon wants, it's between him and me. Sokolov studied him for a long moment, then surprisingly nodded. Fair enough. Victor, take Mr. Vale to the guest suite. Let him make his call in private. But Victor, Sokolov's voice hardened. Stay close. If I hear anything that sounds like coordination for a rescue attempt, shoot him in the leg. Not fatally, but painfully enough to remind him of his situation. Understood, Victor said, gesturing for Damien to stand. They walked through hallways that smelled like money and menace, past rooms that probably served purposes Damien didn't want to imagine. The guest suite turned out to be more like a luxury prison cell. Expensive furniture, a bathroom with marble fixtures, and windows that definitely wouldn't open or break easily. Victor posted himself outside the door, leaving it cracked just enough to hear if Damien raised his voice. Damien sat on the edge of the bed and stared at his phone, Gideon's message still glowing on the screen. He could ignore it. Should ignore it, probably, but Gideon reaching out now, at this exact moment, couldn't be coincidence. Either Gideon was the source of Sokolov's intelligence, or he was trying to help, and Damien needed to know which. He dialed. Gideon answered on the first ring. Damien, thank God. Are you hurt? Not yet. Start talking, Gideon, and make it convincing, because right now I'm trying to decide if you're the reason I'm in this situation. Silence on the other end, heavy and damning. Then Gideon's voice came back, quieter. It's not what you think. Then explain what it is, because from where I'm sitting, it looks like my fixer just offered to help my kidnapper access my assets. I offered to help because I needed Sokolov to believe I'm on his side. Gideon's words came faster now, urgent. Damien, I've been tracking the threat against Tessa for months, since before the divorce. I knew someone was watching her. I knew there was pressure on you, but I couldn't figure out the source until 3 weeks ago when one of Sokolov's people approached me. Approached you how? They knew things, Damien, things they shouldn't know. About the divorce being staged, about you still having Tessa under surveillance, about the pregnancy. They knew everything, which meant either we had a leak or they'd been inside our operation from the beginning. Damien's grip on the phone tightened. And you didn't think to tell me this? I tried. I sent you 3 encrypted messages over the last 2 weeks. You never responded. That was true. Damien had been so focused on monitoring Tessa, on preparing for the baby's arrival, that he'd ignored most communications that weren't directly related to her safety. A mistake. Possibly a fatal one. Keep talking, Damien said. Sokolov's man offered me a deal. Help them get to you, get access to your assets, and they'd pay me $10 million and guarantee I'd never face consequences for any of the gray area work I've done for you over the years. I said yes. Of course you did. I said yes so I could get close enough to figure out their operation. Gideon's voice rose, then dropped again. Damien, they have a mole. Someone in your inner circle has been feeding them information for over a year. I don't know who yet, but I'm close. And if I can identify them before you transfer any assets, we can flip this whole situation. Or you're the mole, and this is an elaborate story to keep me cooperative. If I were the mole, why would I warn you? Why wouldn't I just let Sokolov squeeze you for everything and take my cut? It was a fair point, but Damien had learned the hard way that fair points could be misdirection. What do you want from me, Gideon? I want you to trust me for about 6 more hours. I'm close to identifying the real leak. Once I have that, I'll have leverage we can use against Sokolov. But I need you to play along, act like you're considering cooperation, and for God's sake, don't do anything heroic that gets you killed before I can pull this off. 6 hours, Damien repeated. And then what? Then we turn the tables. But Damien, Gideon paused. Tessa and the baby, they're really safe? Riley got them clear? According to Sokolov, yes. Why? Because if they're not, if this is a bluff, then none of my plan matters. I need to know they're actually secure before I make my move. Damien closed his eyes, thinking about Tessa in the back of Riley's car, holding Elena, both of them alive. I saw them on a video feed. They looked safe, but I don't have independent confirmation. I can get that. Give me 2 hours. Gideon, if you're playing me, I'm not. I swear on everything I have, Damien. I'm not playing you. You saved my life 5 years ago when that deal in Prague went bad. I owe you. More than that, I respect you, and I'll be damned if I let Sokolov turn you into his puppet. The line went dead before Damien could respond. He sat there, phone in hand, trying to decide if he'd just been manipulated or if Gideon was actually on his side. The problem was, Gideon was excellent at manipulation. It was literally his job. Separating truth from strategy was nearly impossible. Victor opened the door. Mr. Sokolov wants to know if you're ready to begin discussions about asset transfers. Tell Mr. Sokolov I need proof that my family is actually safe before I discuss anything. Independent verification. Not video feeds he could have doctored, not messages he could have forced. I want to speak directly to Tessa or Riley. Victor's expression suggested this was going to be a problem. Mr. Sokolov was very clear that you have no communication with them until after the transfers begin. Then the transfers don't begin. Damien stood, meeting Victor's eyes. I gave myself up to protect them. If I don't know they're actually safe, what incentive do I have to cooperate? The incentive is that we don't kill you. I've been threatened with death before. It's lost its impact. Damien moved toward the door, knowing Victor would either shoot him or let him pass. Take me back to Sokolov. We're renegotiating terms. Victor didn't shoot him, which Damien took as a good sign. They walked back through the compound to Sokolov's study, where the older man was reviewing documents and looked genuinely surprised to see Damien again so soon. Mr. Vale, I wasn't expecting you back quite yet. I want proof of life, for both Tessa and the baby. And I want it now, or you can forget about cooperation. Sokolov set down his papers slowly. You're making demands, in my home, surrounded by my men, with absolutely no leverage. I have the only leverage that matters. You need me alive and functional to access my assets. Torture won't work. We both know that. Threats won't work because you've already played your biggest card. So yes, I'm making demands. Prove to me my family is safe, or spend the next 72 hours watching me sit in silence. The room went quiet. Victor shifted behind Damien, hand probably on his weapon. Sokolov's expression was unreadable, his eyes calculating something Damien couldn't see. Finally, Sokolov smiled. You know what? I like you, Mr. Vale. You have the kind of audacity I appreciate. Victor, get me a phone line to Dr. Cross. Let Mr. Vale speak to his family. It took 15 minutes to establish a secure connection, 15 minutes during which Damien stood perfectly still and tried not to think about all the ways this could go wrong. When Victor finally handed him a phone, Damien's hand was steady despite the fear coursing through him. Riley? He said into the receiver. Damien. Riley's voice came through clear and exhausted. Thank God. Are you... I'm fine. Where are you? Safe house, about 2 hours south of the city. Tessa and Elena are both stable. The baby's perfect. 7 pounds, 3 ounces. All her vitals are good. Tessa's recovering well. No complications from the delivery despite the circumstances. Relief hit Damien so hard he had to sit down. Let me talk to her. Damien, she's sleeping. She's been through hell and she finally crashed about an hour ago. I don't want to... Wake her up, Riley, please. I need to hear her voice. There was rustling, low voices, and then Tessa's voice came on the line, thick with sleep and worry. Damien? Hey, his voice came out rougher than he intended. How are you feeling? Like I gave birth in a warehouse while people were shooting at us. So, not great. Tessa paused. Where are you? Somewhere safe. The lie tasted bitter, but he couldn't tell her the truth. Not with Sokolov listening. I just needed to hear your voice and to know you and Elena are really okay. We're okay. Damien, what's happening? Riley won't tell me anything, and the last thing I remember clearly is you promising to come back. I will come back. I just need a few days to handle some business. Business? Tessa's voice sharpened despite her exhaustion. Is this about Sokolov? Damien, tell me the truth. He wanted to. Wanted to tell her everything. Wanted to warn her to run. Wanted to hear her tell him not to be an idiot and sacrifice himself. But Sokolov was watching, Victor was listening, and the truth would only put her in more danger. It's about making sure you and Elena stay safe, he said instead. That's all that matters. Tessa, I love you. I've loved you through every day of the last 8 months, and I'll love you through whatever comes next. But right now, I need you to trust Riley and do exactly what she says. You're scaring me. I know, I'm sorry, but please, just trust me. Take care of our daughter, and Tessa. He glanced at Sokolov, who was watching with an expression of mild interest. Don't trust anyone who isn't Riley or Vera. No one else. Promise me. Damien, promise me, Tessa. I promise. But you have to promise me something, too. Promise me you'll come back. Not just physically, but actually come back. Don't do something noble and stupid that gets you killed. I'll do my best. That's not a promise. It's the only one I can make right now. Damien heard Elena crying in the background, that same indignant wail from the warehouse. She sounds strong. She is strong. She's your daughter. Tessa's voice softened. And mine. Which means she's going to be stubborn and brilliant and probably give us hell for the next 18 years. I'm looking forward to it. Then come back to us. Please, Damien, come back. The line went dead before he could respond, Sokolov having reached over and pressed the disconnect button. Touching, Sokolov said. Very touching. Now, shall we discuss business? Damien set down the phone carefully, using the moment to compose himself. Hearing Tessa's voice, hearing Elena cry, had grounded him in a way nothing else could. He had something to fight for, someone to get back to. What do you want to know? He asked. Let's start with your primary holding company, Vale Industries. What's the current valuation? They talked for the next 2 hours, Sokolov asking detailed questions about assets and accounts, while Damien provided just enough information to seem cooperative without actually giving anything useful. It was a delicate dance, one he'd learned from his father during countless hostile negotiations. Around hour 3, Victor interrupted. Sir, we have a situation. Sokolov looked up, irritated. What kind of situation? Someone's approaching the compound. Single vehicle moving slowly. They're not hostile, but they're definitely intentional. Who? We're not sure yet. They're still a mile out. Victor glanced at Damien. Should we assume it's a rescue attempt? If it were a rescue attempt, you wouldn't see them coming, Damien said. Vera's better than that. Sokolov stood, moving to a bank of monitors that showed various security camera feeds. Damien followed, watching as a dark sedan appeared on one of the screens, crawling up the private road toward the compound. Only one person in the vehicle, Victor reported. Driver only. No visible weapons. Stop them at the gate, Sokolov ordered. Find out who they are and what they want. The sedan reached the gate and stopped. The driver's door opened and a man stepped out, tall, lean, wearing a dark suit that probably cost more than the car. Even from the grainy security footage, Damien recognized him immediately, Gideon Rourke. Well, Sokolov said, sounding genuinely pleased, it appears your fixer has decided to join us in person. How convenient. Damien's jaw clenched. 6 hours, Gideon had said. It had been barely 3. Either Gideon was ahead of schedule with whatever plan he'd been working, or this was the betrayal Damien had been expecting. Victor spoke into a radio, coordinating with the guards at the gate. After a moment, Gideon's voice came through the speaker system. My name is Gideon Rourke. I work for Damien Vale. I'm here to discuss a business proposition with Mr. Sokolov. I'm unarmed and I'm alone. I'd appreciate not being shot. Sokolov looked at Damien. What do you think? Is this a trick? With Gideon, everything's a trick. The question is whether it's a trick that helps us or hurts us. Us? Sokolov's eyebrows rose. Are we an us now, Mr. Vale? We're both about to deal with Gideon, which makes us temporary allies at minimum. Sokolov laughed, genuine amusement in the sound. Fair enough. Victor, bring Mr. Rourke inside. Search him thoroughly. If he's carrying anything more dangerous than a pen, shoot him and dump the body in the woods. 20 minutes later, Gideon walked into Sokolov's study looking completely unruffled despite having just been strip-searched by Victor's team. He nodded to Damien with the same casual professionalism he'd shown in 1,000 business meetings, then turned his attention to Sokolov. Mr. Sokolov, thank you for seeing me. I haven't decided whether to see you or kill you yet, Sokolov replied. Start talking and help me make up my mind. Gideon pulled out a flash drive from his pocket. Apparently the search had deemed it non-threatening, and set it on Sokolov's desk. Everything you need to access Damien's offshore accounts. Account numbers, passwords, authentication protocols. About 40% of his liquid assets, roughly $300 million. The room went very, very still. Damien stared at Gideon, his mind refusing to process what he'd just heard. $300 million. 40% of his liquid assets, the exact kind of information that could destroy everything he'd built. Gideon, Damien said quietly, what are you doing? I'm being practical. Gideon didn't look at him, keeping his eyes on Sokolov. You taught me that, Damien. Always be practical. Always know when to cut your losses. Well, I'm cutting mine. Sokolov offered me $10 million in protection. You're offering me loyalty to a sinking ship. The math isn't complicated. You son of a... Mr. Vale, Sokolov's voice cut through Damien's rising fury. Please, let's hear what Mr. Rourke has to say before we resort to violence. Sokolov picked up the flash drive, examining it like it might explode. How do I know this information is legitimate? Test it. Pick any account on that drive and try to access it with the credentials I've provided. You'll find they work perfectly. Gideon's smile was cold, professional. I've been Damien's fixer for 7 years. I know where everybody is buried, every account is hidden, every deal was made. And I'm willing to provide all of it in exchange for my fee and a guarantee that I walk away clean. Sokolov handed the drive to Victor. Verify it. Pick 3 accounts at random. While Victor worked at a laptop in the corner, the room filled with a tension so thick Damien could barely breathe. He kept his eyes on Gideon, trying to read the man he'd trusted with his darkest secrets, trying to find some sign that this was the plan Gideon had mentioned on the phone. He found nothing. Gideon's expression was perfectly neutral, perfectly professional, perfectly unreadable. Sir, Victor said after several minutes, all 3 accounts verified. The credentials work. This is legitimate. Sokolov's smile was triumphant. Well, Mr. Rourke, it appears you are a man of your word. I accept your offer. Victor, transfer Mr. Rourke's fee immediately. Wait. Damien stood, every muscle coiled tight with rage and betrayal. You're just going to take his word? Gideon could be playing both of us. This could be a setup. A setup for what purpose? Sokolov asked. Mr. Rourke has given me access to hundreds of millions of dollars. What possible angle could justify that kind of sacrifice? The angle where he gets paid by both of us, Damien said. The angle where he takes your money, lets you think you've won, and then pulls some trick that leaves us both empty-handed. Gideon finally looked at him, and for just a second, Damien saw something flicker in his eyes. Apology? Warning? He couldn't tell. I'm not playing anyone, Damien, Gideon said. I'm making a choice. The same choice you made when you divorced Tessa to keep her safe. You sacrificed your marriage. I'm sacrificing my loyalty. We both did what we had to do. The comparison made Damien's hands curl into fists. Don't compare what I did to this. I protected someone I love. You're selling out for money. And protection, Gideon corrected. Don't forget the protection, which, given what I know about your business dealings, is worth more than the money. Sokolov was watching this exchange with the expression of a man enjoying a particularly good show. Gentlemen, as fascinating as this is, we have business to conclude. Mr. Rourke, your fee has been transferred. You're free to go. Mr. Vale, he turned to Damien, we'll begin the asset transfers immediately. And given your fixer's generous cooperation, I'm inclined to reduce my take to 50% instead of 70%. Consider it a gesture of goodwill. How generous, Damien said flatly. I thought so. Sokolov gestured to Victor. Take Mr. Vale back to his suite. We'll start the paperwork in an hour. Victor moved toward Damien, but Gideon held up a hand. Actually, there's one more thing. Everyone froze. I lied, Gideon said calmly. Well, partially lied. The account information is real. The credentials work. But what I didn't mention is that every single account on that flash drive has a dead man's switch built into it. Access the funds without the proper authorization sequence, and they all lock down permanently. The money doesn't disappear. It just becomes completely inaccessible to everyone, including Damien. Sokolov's expression darkened. What authorization sequence? The one only I know. Gideon's smile was sharp now, all pretense of cooperation gone. See, I've been planning for this moment for about 6 months. Ever since I realized someone in Damien's organization was feeding information to outside parties. I couldn't figure out who, but I knew eventually it would lead to something like this. A play for control. A hostile takeover. So I built in protections. You're bluffing, Sokolov said. Test me. Try to move money from any of those accounts without my authorization. Watch what happens. Victor was already typing furiously on the laptop. After a moment, he looked up, his expression grim. He's not bluffing. The system is requesting a secondary authentication code. Without it, the accounts are read-only. Sokolov stood slowly, his earlier amusement completely gone. Mr. Rourke, you're making a very dangerous mistake. No, I'm making a strategic play. Gideon pulled out his phone, holding it up so everyone could see the screen. This phone contains the authorization codes. It's also set to automatically send those codes to a list of recipients if I don't check in every 12 hours. Recipients including the FBI, the SEC, and several investigative journalists who would love to dig into how a Russian arms dealer tried to extort an American businessman. Damien couldn't help it. He smiled. You brilliant bastard. I learned from the best. Gideon finally looked at him directly. You taught me to always have a backup plan, to never trust anyone completely, and to protect the people who matter, even if it costs everything. So this was the plan, Damien said. 6 hours. You needed time to get here and set this up. Actually needed about 3, but I padded the timeline in case you did something stupid. Gideon turned back to Sokolov. Here's how this is going to work. You're going to let Damien walk out of here right now, completely unharmed. In exchange, I'll give you the authorization codes for one account. Let's call it a consolation prize. $20 million. Enough to make this worth your time without crippling Damien's operation. 20 million? Sokolov's voice was deadly quiet. I was promised hundreds. You were promised nothing. You tried to extort it and you failed. But I'm offering you an out that lets you save face and make a profit. Take it or spend the next decade dealing with federal investigations. The silence that followed was broken only by the sound of Damien's heartbeat in his ears. Sokolov could kill them both right now. Probably should kill them both from a purely tactical standpoint. But Gideon's threat about the codes being released wasn't one Sokolov could ignore. Finally, Sokolov laughed. It started quiet and built into something genuine, almost admiring. You have stones, Mr. Rourke, I'll give you that. Fine, 20 million and Damien walks, but his expression hardened. If I find out you're lying about those codes, if I find out this is a bluff, I will hunt you both down and make you watch while I destroy everything and everyone you've ever cared about. Clear? Crystal, Gideon said. Victor, process the transfer and then escort both these gentlemen off my property. Sokolov sat back down at his desk, suddenly looking tired. And Mr. Vale? Consider this a one-time courtesy. If our paths cross again, the outcome will be very different. They won't, Damien said. You have my word. They were escorted out of the study, through the compound, and back to the main gate where Gideon's sedan waited. Victor watched them with the expression of a man who desperately wanted to shoot someone but couldn't quite justify it. You have 2 minutes to be off this property, Victor said. After that, the gate locks, and we shoot on sight. Damien didn't need to be told twice. He climbed into the passenger seat of Gideon's car while Gideon got behind the wheel. They pulled away from the compound in silence, neither speaking until they were back on the main highway. Then Damien turned to Gideon and said, "Explain. All of it." "There's a mole," Gideon said, "in your organization. Someone who's been feeding Sokolov information for over a year. I've narrowed it down to 3 possibilities, but I need more time to confirm which one." "Who are the 3? "Marcus Chen from your legal team, Patricia Alvarez from operations, and—" Gideon hesitated. "And who?" "And your sister Vera." Damien's blood ran cold. "No, absolutely not. Vera would never—" "I don't think it's her either," Gideon said quickly. "But she had access to everything, including the surveillance on Tessa. She knew about the fake divorce. She knew about the pregnancy. And she's been in the perfect position to feed information without raising suspicion. It's not Vera. I know you believe that, but we have to consider every possibility." Gideon took a turn too fast, clearly eager to put distance between them and Sokolov's compound. "I have evidence that someone in your inner circle accessed Tessa's medical portal and planted surveillance in the warehouse clinic. The technical skills required narrow it down to those 3 people." "Show me the evidence." "I will. But first we need to get you somewhere safe, get you in touch with Tessa and Vera, and make sure Sokolov actually honors his agreement to leave you alone." Damien's phone buzzed, the one Victor had returned when they were released. Multiple messages from Vera, each more urgent than the last. "Where are you?" "Damien, respond now. I have the safe house locked down, but we have a problem. Call me immediately." He dialed Vera's number, and she answered before the first ring finished. "Damien, thank God, where the hell have you been?" "Sokolov's compound. Long story. What's the problem?" "The problem is that Riley's safe house just got flagged on 3 different surveillance networks. Someone knows where Tessa and the baby are, and they're moving assets into position around the location." Damien's grip on the phone tightened. "Sokolov agreed to let them go. We had a deal." "Maybe Sokolov isn't the only player in this game," Vera said. "I've been running analysis on the threat patterns, and there's a second party involved. Someone who's been shadowing Sokolov's operation but operating independently. Damien, I think we have 2 different enemies here, and we've only been focused on one." The pieces clicked together in Damien's mind with horrible clarity. The mole in his organization, the surveillance that Sokolov had but claimed he'd only recently obtained, the way Gideon's 3 suspects all had different access points to different information. "They're not working alone," Damien said. "The mole isn't just feeding information to Sokolov. They're running their own operation." "That's my assessment too." Vera's voice was tight. "And whoever they are, they just made a move on Tessa and Elena. We have maybe 20 minutes before hostile forces reach the safe house." Damien looked at Gideon. "How fast can you drive?" "Fast enough. Where are we going?" "To save my family." Again. Gideon floored the accelerator, and they raced toward the one thing that mattered more than money, more than business, more than anything else in Damien's carefully constructed world. They raced toward Tessa and Elena, who were about to become pawns in a game they'd never asked to play. And Damien was done playing games. The speedometer hit 90 as Gideon pushed the sedan past every safe limit, weaving through traffic like the road was a combat zone. Damien had his phone pressed to his ear, listening to Vera coordinate defensive positions while simultaneously trying to identify which of the approaching vehicles were hostile and which were civilian. "I count 4 SUVs converging from different directions," Vera said, her voice clipped and professional despite the urgency. 2 from the north, 1 from the east, 1 from the south. They're timing it to arrive simultaneously, which means this is coordinated, professional. "Can Riley move Tessa and the baby?" Damien asked. "Tessa's in no condition to run. She gave birth 6 hours ago, Damien. She can barely stand without Riley's help, and moving her risks hemorrhaging or worse. We need to defend the position, not evacuate." "Then we defend." Damien's mind was already running through tactical scenarios. "What's our asset count at the safe house?" "Riley has basic security, reinforced doors, panic room, but no personnel. I can have a team there in 15 minutes. "We'll be there in 12. Damien glanced at Gideon. How are we on weapons? Gideon jerked his head toward the back seat. Check the duffel bag. I came prepared for multiple scenarios, including the one where Sokolov decided talking was less fun than shooting. Damien reached back and unzipped the bag. Inside were 2 handguns, a tactical shotgun, 4 magazines, and enough ammunition to hold off a small army. You drove to a hostile negotiation with an arsenal in your back seat? I drove to a hostile negotiation prepared to get you out by any means necessary. The arsenal was Plan B. What was Plan A? The flash drive scam, which worked, incidentally. Barely. Damien checked one of the handguns, confirming it was loaded and functional. You cut it close, Gideon. Story of my life. Gideon took a corner hard enough that the tires screamed. Vera, what's the safe house layout? If we're defending, I need to know the terrain. Vera's voice came through the speaker. 2-story residential converted to secure facility. Main entrance reinforced, secondary entrance through the garage. Panic room accessible from the master bedroom on the 2nd floor. The panic room is rated for small arms fire but won't hold against heavy ordnance or sustained assault. Windows? Bulletproof on the 1st floor, regular glass on the 2nd. Blind spots on the east and west sides where the property line meets heavy tree cover. That's where they'll stage, Damien said. Hit us from the blind spots while creating a distraction at the main entrance. Classic pincer move. I'm already repositioning cameras, Vera replied. And Damien, there's something else you need to know. I pulled traffic camera footage from the past hour around the safe house location. One of the approaching vehicles registered to a shell company we've seen before. Which one? The same shell company that paid for the surveillance equipment in the warehouse clinic. The same one that's appeared in 3 different financial investigations related to your business over the past 18 months. Damien's jaw clenched. The mole. The mole, Vera confirmed. Whoever's driving that vehicle either is the mole or works for them. And Damien, I ran the plate through our system. The vehicle was rented using credentials belonging to Patricia Alvarez. Patricia Alvarez, Director of Operations for Vale Industries, 15 years with the company. Someone Damien had trusted with logistics, supply chains, and the kind of operational details that required complete discretion. Someone who could have easily planted surveillance, accessed medical portals, and coordinated with outside parties without raising immediate suspicion. Are we sure it's her? Damien asked. The credentials are hers. Whether she's actually in the vehicle or someone stole her identity, I can't confirm yet. We'll confirm when we get there. Damien looked at the GPS, 7 minutes out. Gideon, when we arrive, you take the west approach. I'll take east. Vera, I need you running Overwatch from wherever you are. I'm mobile, heading your direction. ETA 20 minutes. Then we hold for 20 minutes. Damien, Tessa's voice suddenly came through the phone, weak but determined. Is that you? His heart clenched. Tessa, you should be resting. Riley told me what's happening. People are coming. More people with guns. She paused, and he could hear Elena fussing in the background. How many times are we going to do this? How many times are we going to run? As many times as it takes to keep you safe. I don't want to be safe if it means constantly looking over my shoulder. Tessa's voice strengthened. I want this finished. I want whoever's doing this stopped permanently so our daughter doesn't grow up in a war zone. That's the plan. Then promise me something. Promise me you'll stop trying to protect me from the truth. If we're going to end this, I need to know everything. No more secrets, no more staged divorces, no more lies. Real partnership, real trust. Damien closed his eyes briefly, knowing she was right, hating that the conversation was happening now when he needed to focus on keeping her alive. I promise. After tonight, no more secrets. After tonight, Tessa agreed. Now go do whatever violent, probably illegal thing you're planning and come back to us. The line switched back to Vera. 3 minutes out, Damien. The northern vehicles just accelerated. They know we know they're coming. Gideon pushed the sedan even harder, the engine whining with the strain. They crested a hill and the safe house came into view. A large colonial-style home set back from the road, surrounded by mature trees and expensive landscaping designed to provide privacy and security. 2 black SUVs were already visible on the access road, moving fast. We're not going to beat them there, Gideon said. Then we intercept. Damien rolled down his window, cold air flooding the car. Pull alongside the rear vehicle. I'm going to discourage them from proceeding. Discourage them how? Aggressively. Gideon accelerated, closing the distance between their sedan and the trailing SUV. Damien leaned out the window, weapon ready, and fired 3 shots into the SUV's rear tire. The vehicle swerved violently, the driver overcorrecting and sending the SUV careening off the road into a drainage ditch. 1 down. The lead SUV's rear window rolled down and a figure leaned out, armed, tracking their movement. Damien ducked back inside just as bullets punched through their rear windshield, glass exploding into the back seat. "They're not playing around," Gideon said unnecessarily, jerking the wheel to put a tree line between them and the shooter. "Neither are we." Damien reloaded. "Get me close to the house. I'll go in on foot. You circle back and make sure that ditch-diving SUV stays down." "Damien, that's not a debate." Gideon hit the brakes hard enough that Damien had to brace against the dashboard. They were 50 yards from the safe house, close enough that Damien could see Riley in an upstairs window, phone pressed to her ear, probably coordinating with Vera. Damien was out of the car before it fully stopped, moving in a combat crouch toward the house. The remaining northern SUV had pulled into the driveway, doors already opening to disgorge 4 men in tactical gear. Professional contractors, probably former military, definitely expensive. He dropped the first man with 2 shots before any of them registered his approach. The other 3 scattered, using their vehicle for cover while returning fire. Damien made it to a large oak tree, bark exploding beside his head as bullets found his position. His phone buzzed with a text from Vera. "East and south vehicles converging. You have 60 seconds before they box you in." Damien looked toward the house. The front door was reinforced, but getting to it meant crossing 15 yards of open lawn while under fire from 3 directions. Mathematically, he'd take at least 2 bullets before reaching cover, possibly more if they were good shots. He was considering the odds when the safe house's garage door suddenly rolled up and Riley appeared, medical bag in one hand and a shotgun in the other. "Need a ride?" she shouted over the gunfire. Damien sprinted for the garage, bullets tracking his movement but missing as Riley provided covering fire with the shotgun. He dove through the opening and Riley hit the door control, the garage sealing them inside. "Where's Tessa?" Damien gasped, checking himself for wounds and finding none. "Panic room with Elena. She's armed." "You arm my wife while she's recovering from childbirth?" "Your wife demanded to be armed," Riley corrected. "And given the circumstances, I agreed with her assessment of the situation." The garage door shuddered under impact, someone ramming it or trying to breach. Riley calmly racked the shotgun. "That door will hold for maybe 2 minutes," she said. "What's the plan?" "We get to the panic room, lock down, and wait for Vera's team." "And if they breach before the team arrives?" "Then we make them regret it." They moved through the house quickly, Riley leading because she knew the layout. The sound of breaking glass came from upstairs, someone entering through a second-floor window. Footsteps overhead, multiple people, spreading out to search. Damien's phone lit up with a call from a number he didn't recognize. Against his better judgment, he answered. "Hello, Damien." The voice was female, professional, and terrifyingly familiar. "Patricia Alvarez." "I assume you figured out by now that I'm not just your director of operations." "Patricia." Damien kept moving toward the stairs, gun ready. "I'm a little busy right now. Can we schedule this conversation for after I've dealt with the people you sent to kill my family?" "I didn't send them to kill anyone. I sent them to retrieve something that belongs to me." "Nothing here belongs to you. On the contrary, the information you've been building for the past 7 years, the contacts, the operations, the intelligence network, I helped create all of that. I was there from the beginning, feeding you opportunities, connecting you with the right people, making you successful. And now I want my return on that investment." Damien reached the second floor, Riley close behind. The panic room was down the hall, past 2 bedrooms and a bathroom. He could see shadows moving in the bedroom to his left. "So this was never about Sokolov," Damien said, keeping Patricia talking while he positioned himself. "He was just a convenient distraction while you made your move." "Sokolov was a blunt instrument I used to apply pressure. He wanted your money. I want your empire. Very different goals." Patricia's voice took on an edge. "You should have taken my partnership offer 2 years ago, Damien. We could have built something extraordinary together. Instead, you chose to protect your precious moral boundaries and ignore the practical realities of our business. The practical reality is that you're going to federal prison. No, the practical reality is that I have enough evidence of your illegal activities to bury you for 3 lifetimes. The only reason I haven't released it is because doing so would also bury my own investments. But if you force my hand, I will absolutely pull that trigger. A figure emerged from the bedroom, tactical gear, weapon raised, and Damien fired twice. The man went down, but the noise brought others running. Damien grabbed Riley, and they sprinted for the panic room. The door was reinforced steel, biometric lock that read Damien's palm print and clicked open. They tumbled inside, and Damien slammed it shut, hearing the locks engage with a series of heavy thuds. The panic room was about 12 by 12, lined with monitors showing security camera feeds from around the property. Tessa sat in the corner, holding Elena with one arm while gripping a handgun with the other. She looked pale, exhausted, and absolutely fierce. "Took you long enough," she said. Traffic was hell. Damien crossed to her, kneeling down to check her over. "Are you okay? Is Elena okay?" "We're fine. Scared, but fine." Tessa's eyes went to the monitors. "Damien, there are at least a dozen people out there. How are we—" The panic room phone rang. Landline, hardwired, impossible to trace. Damien answered it. "Impressive response time," Patricia said. "You made it to the panic room faster than I expected, but you realize that room isn't a solution, just a delay. My people have the equipment to cut through that door in about 20 minutes. Then I guess we have 20 minutes to talk." Damien kept his voice calm, watching the monitors as Patricia's contractors set up cutting equipment outside the panic room door. "What do you actually want, Patricia? And don't give me the Empire speech. What's the real endgame?" She was quiet for a moment. "I want recognition. I want credit for the work I've done. I want to stop being the person who makes things happen while men like you get all the glory and all the profit. So this is about ego. This is about justice. I spent 15 years building you up, Damien. 15 years of my intelligence, my connections, my strategies, making you wealthy and powerful. And what did I get? A salary. A title. The satisfaction of knowing I was the smartest person in every room but could never say it out loud. You could have left, started your own operation. With what capital? What connections? Everything I built was under your name, your company, your control. You owned my success, and the moment I tried to claim any of it, you would have destroyed me. So yes, I took precautions. I built my own network, and now I'm taking what's mine." On the monitors, Damien could see Gideon's sedan pulling up outside, Gideon emerging with weapons ready. But he was outnumbered at least 10 to 1. "You can't win this, Patricia," Damien said. "Even if you get through this door, even if you kill me and take everything I have, Vera knows the truth now. Gideon knows. You'll spend the rest of your life running. I'll spend the rest of my life wealthy and free," Patricia corrected, "because the evidence I have against you includes things that would make Vera and Gideon accessories to multiple felonies. They'll protect me to protect themselves. It's basic self-preservation." Damien looked at Tessa, who was listening to the conversation with an expression that suggested she was forming her own opinions about Patricia's chances of success. Elena had fallen asleep against her mother's chest, somehow finding peace in the middle of chaos. "I have a counter-offer," Damien said. "I'm listening." "You walk away right now, take whatever money you've already skimmed, and we both know you've been skimming for years, and disappear. I won't pursue you, won't press charges, won't even acknowledge you existed. Clean break. And I give up the leverage I have over you. Not likely. The leverage cuts both ways, Patricia. I have Gideon Rourke, who's been documenting every unusual transaction in my company for the past 6 months. He has evidence that you've been siphoning funds through the same shell companies you used to pay Sokolov. You release your evidence against me, I release his evidence against you. Mutually assured destruction. Nobody wins. More silence. Damien could almost hear Patricia calculating, weighing odds, running scenarios. "Gideon doesn't have that evidence," she finally said. "He would have used it already if he did." On cue, Damien's phone buzzed with a message from Gideon containing a file labeled Alvarez Financial Crimes, Evidence Package. He'd been waiting for the right moment. Damien opened it enough to confirm it was legitimate. Bank records, transaction histories, communications that clearly showed Patricia building a parallel empire using stolen Veil resources. Check your email, Damien said. I'm sending you a preview now. He forwarded the file to Patricia's company address and waited. The cutting equipment outside the panic room door went quiet. Through the cameras, he could see Patricia's contractors receiving new orders, some of them already backing away from the door. You're bluffing, Patricia said, but her voice had lost its certainty. Call the bluff. See what happens. Damien's voice hardened. Or take the offer I'm giving you, which is more generous than you deserve. Walk away. Keep whatever you've already stolen. Live your life somewhere far from here. But if you try to hurt my family again, if you come after me or my business or anyone I care about, I will release everything Gideon has compiled, and I will personally ensure you spend the next 20 years in federal prison. Your choice. The line went silent for so long, Damien thought she'd hung up. Then Patricia spoke, her voice tight with barely controlled rage. This isn't over. Yes, it is. It's over because I'm making it over. You lost, Patricia. You played the long game, you made the smart moves, but you underestimated how far I would go to protect my family. That was your mistake. My mistake was thinking you had principles, that you'd never cross certain lines. I'll cross any line for them. Damien looked at Tessa and Elena. Every single one. Now call off your people and disappear before I change my mind about being generous. The cutting equipment outside shut down completely. Through the cameras, Damien watched as Patricia's contractors packed up their gear and retreated to their vehicles. Within minutes, the property was clear except for Gideon, who stood in the driveway looking confused but ready for whatever came next. Vera's voice came through Damien's phone. What just happened? I'm seeing full retreat on all channels. Patricia Alvarez was the mole. We just negotiated her exit. Negotiated? Damien, she tried to kill you, multiple times. And now she's leaving, permanently. With enough evidence against her that if she ever resurfaces, we can destroy her. Damien unlocked the panic room door. Where's your team? 5 minutes out. You want them to pursue the retreating vehicles? No, let them go. This ends tonight. Riley was already helping Tessa stand, supporting her weight, while Damien carefully took Elena. His daughter was still sleeping, completely oblivious to the fact that she'd just survived her second siege in less than 12 hours. She's going to have stories to tell when she's older, Tessa said weakly. She's going to have a boring, safe, completely normal childhood, Damien corrected. I'm done with this. All of it. The gray area business, the dangerous associates, the constant threat assessment. I'm out. Damien, I mean it, Tessa. I've spent years building an empire that just put my family in danger. What's the point? What good is money or power if I can't even keep my wife and daughter safe without turning our lives into a combat zone? Gideon appeared in the doorway, slightly out of breath. So, did we win? Because it looked like we won, but I've learned not to trust appearances where you're involved. We won, Damien confirmed. Patricia's gone. Sokolov's satisfied with his 20 million. As far as I can tell, we're actually clear. Huh. Gideon leaned against the wall. That was surprisingly anticlimactic for a finale. I'll take anticlimactic over catastrophic, Riley said. Now can we please get Tessa to an actual hospital? She's been through enough for one day. Vera's team arrived moments later. 6 heavily armed professionals who swept the property and confirmed it was secure before helping Riley get Tessa to one of their vehicles. Damien rode with them, still holding Elena, unwilling to let his daughter out of his sight. The drive to the hospital was quiet, everyone coming down from the adrenaline high and processing what had just happened. Tessa dozed against Damien's shoulder, while Elena woke up long enough to fuss about being hungry before Riley showed Tessa how to nurse her in the moving vehicle. You're really going to quit? Tessa asked quietly, watching Elena feed. I'm really going to quit the dangerous parts. The legitimate businesses can stay. Everything else, the off-book deals, the gray market operations, the whole network that made me a target, it's done. Just like that? Just like that. Damien kissed her forehead. I told you before, you and Elena are everything. The rest is just noise. What about the people who depend on those operations? Your associates, your partners. They'll adapt, find new sources, new connections. I'll help transition everything properly, make sure nobody gets hurt by my exit. But I'm done putting profit over safety. Tessa was quiet for a long moment, her hand stroking Elena's tiny head. I believe you, and I forgive you. Damien looked at her, surprised. For what? For the divorce, for pushing me away, for trying to protect me in the stupidest, most hurtful way possible. She smiled, tired but genuine. I understand why you did it, even if I hate how you did it. And if we're going to move forward, really move forward, I need to let go of the anger. I don't deserve that. Probably not, but I'm giving it to you anyway. Tessa's eyes met his. On one condition, you talk to me. About everything, the threats, the danger, the decisions that affect our family. Real partnership, remember? Real partnership, Damien agreed. Starting now. The hospital came into view, a modern building that looked nothing like the warehouse clinic or the panic room or any of the places they'd fought to survive over the past 12 hours. Riley had called ahead, and a team was waiting to take Tessa for a full examination. I'll stay with Elena, Damien told Tessa as they wheeled her toward the maternity ward. You'll sleep, Tessa corrected. You look like you're about to collapse. Riley can watch Elena for a few hours. I'm fine. You're running on adrenaline and stubbornness. Sleep, Damien. We'll both be here when you wake up. He wanted to argue, but exhaustion was already pulling at him, making his thoughts slow and his body heavy. Riley took Elena with practiced ease, promising to wake him if anything changed, and a nurse directed Damien to a private waiting room with a couch that was surprisingly comfortable. He sat down, intending to just rest his eyes for a minute, and was asleep within seconds. He woke to sunlight streaming through the windows and Vera sitting in the chair across from him, working on a laptop. What time is it? Damien asked, his voice rough. 7 a.m. You slept for 4 hours. Tessa and Elena are both fine, in case you were wondering. Clean bill of health for both of them. Relief washed over him. And Patricia? Gone. Completely off the grid. I've been monitoring for any digital footprint, and she's either dead or very good at disappearing. She's not dead. Damien sat up, working feeling back into his stiff muscles. She's too smart and too careful to do anything that would leave a body. She'll surface eventually, somewhere far from here, under a new name. And we'll let her? We'll let her, as long as she stays gone. Damien looked at his sister. Thank you. For everything, for tracking me, for coordinating the defense, for keeping Tessa and Elena safe. That's what family does. Vera closed her laptop. Speaking of which, there's something you should know. About Gideon. What about him? The evidence package he compiled on Patricia? It was real, but it was also incomplete. He didn't have nearly as much as he claimed. The bluff worked because Patricia didn't want to risk calling it. Damien smiled despite himself. Of course he was bluffing. That's what makes him good at his job. You're not angry? I'm alive. Tessa's alive. Elena's alive. Patricia's gone, and Sokolov's satisfied. Why would I be angry? Because Gideon lied to you. Again. He lied to save us. There's a difference. Damien stood, stretching. Where is he? Downstairs, sleeping in his car because he refused to leave until he knew everyone was safe. That sounds like Gideon. Damien found Tessa in a private room, awake and holding Elena, looking significantly better than she had 12 hours ago. She smiled when he entered, and the sight of them, his wife, and his daughter, safe and whole, made everything he'd endured worth it. Hey, Tessa said softly, come meet your daughter properly, without guns and panic rooms and Russian mobsters. Damien crossed to the bed and carefully took Elena, marveling at how small she was, how perfect. She had Tessa's nose in his eyes, and when she yawned, he felt something inside him fundamentally shift. This was what mattered. This was everything. Elena May Vale, he said quietly. Welcome to a world that's going to be a lot less exciting from now on. Promise? Tessa asked. I promise. No more secrets, no more danger. Just us. Just family. And for the first time in 8 months, Damien believed it. The promise lasted exactly 3 days before reality caught up with them. Damien had meant every word when he'd told Tessa they were done with the dangerous life. And for those 3 perfect days at the hospital, it had almost seemed possible. They'd existed in a bubble where the biggest concerns were diaper changes and feeding schedules, and whether Elena preferred being swaddled tightly or loosely. Vera had stationed security outside their room, but nothing happened. No threats materialized. No enemies emerged from the shadows. On the 4th morning, Gideon showed up with coffee, and an expression that told Damien the bubble was about to burst. "We have a problem," Gideon said without preamble, handing Damien a tablet. "Patricia didn't disappear. She went to ground long enough to compile a comprehensive file on your entire operation and send it to 3 different parties." Damien's blood went cold. "What parties?" "The FBI, the SEC, and a freelance journalist who specializes in exposing corporate corruption." Gideon sat down heavily in the chair beside Tessa's bed. "The files are detailed, Damien. Transaction records, communications, witness statements, everything needed to build a federal case against you for money laundering, racketeering, and about 15 other charges." Tessa had been nursing Elena, but she stopped, pulling a blanket over herself and the baby, while her eyes went sharp with fear. "When?" "The files were sent sometime yesterday. We intercepted the one going to the journalist. Vera's people got to it before it could be opened. But the FBI and SEC both have their copies, and according to our contacts, they're already convening grand juries." Damien set down the tablet carefully, his mind racing through scenarios. "How much time do we have? Best case? A week before they start making arrests. Worst case? They could show up today. Then we have to move first." Damien looked at Tessa. "I need to make this right, all of it, before it destroys everything." "How?" Tessa's voice was steady, but he could see the fear in her eyes. "Damien, if what Patricia sent them is as bad as Gideon says, there's no talking your way out of federal charges." "I'm not going to talk my way out. I'm going to walk in and confess." The room went silent. Even Elena seemed to sense the gravity of the moment, stopping her fussing to stare up at her father with wide, unfocused eyes. "That's suicide," Gideon said flatly. "Damien, if you confess to half of what's in those files, you're looking at 20 years minimum, probably more. And if I run, I'm looking at a lifetime of running. Tessa and Elena would never be safe. There would always be another Patricia, another Sokolov, another threat waiting in the shadows." Damien stood, pacing to the window where morning light painted the city in shades of gold. "I started this by trying to protect my family through secrets and lies. It didn't work. So now I'm going to try something different. The truth." "The truth will put you in prison," Vera said from the doorway. Damien hadn't heard her enter, but she was there now, arms crossed, expression unreadable. "Is that really what you want for Elena? A father who's incarcerated for her entire childhood?" "I want her to have a father who chose honesty over cowardice, who faced his mistakes instead of running from them." Damien turned to face his sister. "Vera, I've spent my entire adult life operating in gray areas, justifying every questionable decision as necessary for business. And maybe some of it was necessary, but a lot of it wasn't. A lot of it was just me choosing profit over principle because I could get away with it. So you're going to throw yourself on your sword and hope the federal government shows mercy?" Vera shook her head. "That's not how this works. They'll crucify you as an example." "Maybe. Or maybe they'll recognize cooperation when they see it." Damien pulled out his phone. "Gideon, I need you to contact every person I've done business with over the past 7 years. Everyone in the gray areas, everyone who might be implicated by Patricia's files. I'm going to give them 72 hours to clean up their operations and get legitimate before I start talking to federal investigators." "You're giving them a head start to destroy evidence?" "I'm giving them a chance to make better choices than I did. Some of them will take it, some won't. But at least I'll know I tried to minimize the damage." Tessa had been quiet, processing everything. Now she spoke, her voice cutting through the debate. "What about us? Elena and me? If you confess, if you go to prison, what happens to us?" Damien crossed back to the bed, kneeling beside her so they were eye to eye. "You'll be protected. Everything I have, the legitimate businesses, the assets, the properties, it all goes into a trust with you as the primary beneficiary. Vera will help you manage it. You'll have enough money to never worry about security or stability." "I don't care about the money, Damien. I care about you, about our daughter having her father. And she will. Maybe not right away. Maybe not for a few years. But she'll have a father who made the right choice when it mattered, who chose accountability over escape." He took her hand, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. "Tessa, I spent 8 months pushing you away to keep you safe, and it was the worst decision I ever made. I'm not doing that again. But I'm also not going to spend the rest of our lives running from federal warrants and looking over our shoulders. This is the only way to actually end it. What if they don't show mercy? What if you confess and they still give you the maximum sentence? Then I'll serve it knowing I did the right thing, and I'll have memories of these 3 days with you and Elena to get me through it. Damien managed to smile. That's more than a lot of people get. Tessa was crying now, tears streaming down her face while she held Elena close. I just got you back. We just became a family. And we'll still be a family, no matter what happens. Prison can't change that. Gideon cleared his throat. I hate to interrupt the moment, but if you're actually serious about this plan, we need to start moving. 72 hours isn't a lot of time to warn everyone and coordinate with federal authorities. I'm serious. Damien stood, his decision made. Vera, I need you to reach out to the FBI field office. Tell them Damien Vale wants to make a voluntary statement regarding the allegations in Patricia Alvarez's files. No lawyers, no negotiation, just straight cooperation. Damien, that's insane. At least get representation. No lawyers. I'm not trying to cut a deal or minimize my exposure. I'm trying to tell the truth and face the consequences. He looked at each of them, Vera, Gideon, Tessa, the people who mattered most in his world. I need you all to trust me on this, please. Vera was the first to nod, reluctant but accepting. I'll make the call. But Damien, if this goes sideways, if they try to railroad you, I'm pulling you out. Family doesn't let family self-destruct, even for noble reasons. Noted. Gideon? I'll start making contacts, but you're asking people to trust that you won't throw them under the bus to save yourself. I'm not saving myself, that's the whole point. Damien pulled out a piece of paper and started writing names. Start with these 5. They're the ones most likely to be implicated. Give them the warning, give them the timeline, and make it clear I'm not asking for anything in return. Gideon took the list, studying it. Some of these people won't believe you. They'll think it's a trap. Then they'll make their own choices based on that assumption. I can't control what they do. I can only control what I do. Over the next 72 hours, Damien watched his empire begin its controlled demolition. Gideon reported back that most of the people on the contact list had taken the warning seriously, some disappearing entirely, others scrambling to legitimize their operations, a few choosing to cooperate with authorities themselves rather than risk being caught in the eventual net. Patricia's files had created a domino effect, exposing not just Damien's operations, but an entire network of gray market dealings that had operated under the radar for years. The FBI was overwhelmed with the scale of it, which bought Damien a little extra time, but also increased the pressure for someone to serve as the face of the investigation. He was more than willing to be that face. Vera arranged the meeting for dawn on the 6th day after Elena's birth. The FBI field office in downtown was a concrete fortress that looked exactly like what it was. A building designed to process criminals and extract truth. Damien arrived with only Vera, having said goodbye to Tessa and Elena at the hospital in a scene that had broken his heart into pieces he wasn't sure would ever fully reassemble. If you change your mind, Vera said as they sat in the parking lot. If you want to run, I have a plane fueled and ready. We could be in a country with no extradition treaty in 6 hours. I'm not running. I know, but I needed to offer. Vera's expression softened. Dad would be proud of you, you know, for facing this. Dad would tell me I'm an idiot for getting caught. He'd also tell you that real strength is knowing when to fight and when to surrender. You're doing the latter, which is harder. Vera reached over and squeezed his hand. I'll be here when you're done, however long it takes. They walked into the building together, but only Damien was escorted to the interview room. It was exactly like every cop show had ever depicted: gray walls, metal table, uncomfortable chairs, and a two-way mirror that definitely had people watching from the other side. The lead investigator was a woman in her 50s named Agent Sarah Chen, and she had the look of someone who'd seen every con and heard every lie and wasn't impressed by either anymore. Mr. Vale, she said, sitting across from him with a file that was at least 3 inches thick. I understand you want to make a voluntary statement. I do. About everything in Patricia Alvarez's files and anything else you want to know about my business operations over the past 7 years. Agent Chen's eyebrows rose slightly. You understand you have the right to an attorney. I do. I'm waiving that right. And you understand that anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law? I understand. I'm here to tell the truth, not to protect myself. Agent Chen studied him for a long moment, then opened the file. All right, Mr. Vale, let's start with the Meridian Holdings transaction from 2019. Patricia Alvarez's file indicates you used shell companies to launder approximately $15 million in proceeds from an illegal arms deal. True or false? True. The arms deal was brokered through a contact in Prague. The money was laundered through 3 shell companies registered in Delaware and the Cayman Islands before being integrated into Vale Industries' legitimate holdings. Agent Chen's pen moved across her notepad. And you're admitting this freely? I'm admitting everything freely. That's why I'm here. What followed was 12 hours of the most exhaustive confession Damien had ever given. He walked Agent Chen and her team through every questionable transaction, every gray market deal, every decision he'd made that had crossed legal and ethical lines. He named names when asked, but made it clear that most of the operations had been his idea, his implementation, his responsibility. He didn't minimize. He didn't justify. He didn't try to spread the blame or claim ignorance. He simply told the truth and accepted that the consequences would be severe. When they finally called a break around hour 10, Agent Chen looked at him with something that might have been respect. In my 23 years doing this job, she said, I've never had anyone walk in and confess to this level of criminal activity without trying to cut a deal. Why are you doing this, Mr. Vale? Really? Damien thought about Tessa holding Elena, about the 3 days of peace they'd had, about the choice between running forever and facing his mistakes. Because I have a daughter, he said simply, and I want her to grow up knowing her father chose accountability over cowardice, even if it costs me everything. Your daughter's what, less than a week old? 6 days. Agent Chen was quiet for a moment. I have grandchildren, 3 of them, and if someone asked me what I'd want them to remember about me, it would be that I stood for something, that I made hard choices for the right reasons. She closed her file. I can't make you any promises, Mr. Vale. What you've confessed to carries serious prison time, but I can promise that your cooperation will be documented and presented to the U.S. attorney handling your case. That's all I'm asking for. They resumed the interview, working through the remaining details until Agent Chen was satisfied she had everything she needed. When it was finally over, she stood and offered her hand. Thank you for your cooperation, Mr. Vale. An agent will escort you out. Expect to be formally charged within the next week. Damien shook her hand and followed the escort back to the lobby where Vera was waiting. She took one look at his face and knew. You told them everything. Everything. And now we wait to see what happens. What happened was both better and worse than Damien had expected. The formal charges came down exactly a week later, 17 counts ranging from money laundering to wire fraud to racketeering. The U.S. attorney prosecuting the case held a press conference where he called it one of the largest white-collar crime investigations in the region's history. But he also acknowledged Damien's unprecedented level of cooperation and indicated that the government would be recommending a reduced sentence in exchange for continued assistance with related prosecutions. Reduced turned out to mean 12 years instead of 25. Still a lifetime. Still an eternity away from Tessa and Elena. But not forever. Damien stood in the courtroom 6 weeks after Elena's birth and listened to the judge read his sentence with a calm he didn't feel. Tessa was in the gallery, holding Elena, and he couldn't look at them because if he did, he'd break down completely. Mr. Vale, the judge said, you have committed serious crimes that undermine the integrity of our financial system and the rule of law. However, your cooperation with federal authorities and your complete acceptance of responsibility demonstrate a level of contrition that the court finds genuine. You are hereby sentenced to 12 years in federal prison with possibility of parole after 8 years. Do you have anything to say? Damien stood, his legs shaking but his voice steady. I do, Your Honor. I want to acknowledge the harm I've caused, to the people I did business with, to the system I manipulated, and most importantly to my family who deserved better than a husband and father who operated in moral gray areas for profit. I take full responsibility for my actions. I accept this sentence, and I hope that when I've served my time, I'll have the opportunity to prove I can be the person my daughter deserves to have as a father." The judge nodded. "The court hopes so too, Mr. Vale. Bailiff, remand the defendant into custody." Damien was allowed 30 seconds to say goodbye to Tessa before the bailiffs took him. She met him at the barrier, Elena in her arms, tears streaming down her face. "I love you," she said. "We both love you, and we'll be here. When you get out, we'll be here." "I love you too, both of you, more than anything." Damien kissed her forehead, then gently kissed Elena's tiny head. "Be good for your mom, sweetheart. I'll see you as soon as I can." And then the bailiffs were leading him away, and the last thing he saw was Tessa standing in the courtroom holding their daughter, watching him go but not looking away. Federal prison turned out to be exactly as terrible as Damien had imagined, and somehow worse. The first 6 months were the hardest, adjusting to the loss of freedom, the constant noise, the complete lack of privacy. He had a cellmate who snored and 3 neighbors who fought constantly, and a guard rotation that seemed to take particular pleasure in making life difficult for white-collar criminals. But he survived. He kept his head down, followed the rules, and spent every free moment reading the letters Tessa sent him 3 times a week. She wrote about Elena's development, her first smile, her first laugh, the way she seemed to study everything around her with intense curiosity. She sent photos that Damien taped to the wall above his bunk, watching his daughter grow in frozen moments. Vera visited once a month, bringing updates on the business transitions and the continued fallout from his cooperation. Patricia had never resurfaced, and Sokolov had apparently decided the $20 million was sufficient to consider their business concluded. The people Damien had warned had mostly managed to legitimize or disappear, and the few who'd been caught were facing their own consequences. Gideon visited less frequently but wrote constantly, letters full of dark humor and observations about how boring legitimate business was compared to their previous operations. He'd taken over managing some of Damien's remaining legal ventures, and was apparently making them even more profitable through the revolutionary strategy of following all applicable laws. But it was Tessa's visits that kept Damien sane. She came every week without fail, bringing Elena, letting Damien hold his daughter through the barriers and supervise contact that prison allowed. He watched Elena go from newborn to infant to toddler, her personality emerging in ways that reminded him of both her mother and himself. "She's stubborn," Tessa reported on one visit when Elena was 18 months old. "Absolutely refuses to eat anything green. I've tried hiding vegetables and everything, but she somehow knows and spits them out." "That's my girl," Damien said, making Elena laugh by crossing his eyes. "She also refuses to sleep without her stuffed elephant, and she started saying no to everything, literally everything. Elena, do you want breakfast? No. Elena, do you want to play? No. Elena, do you want Daddy to come home? That one she says yes to." Damien's throat tightened. "How much longer? For the vegetables or the prison sentence?" "Both, but I was asking about the latter." Tessa reached across the table, taking his hand in the brief contact allowed. "Your parole hearing is in 6 months. The attorney says you have a strong case, model prisoner, continued cooperation with ongoing investigations, family waiting for you. There's a good chance they'll grant it." 6 months. After 7.5 years, 6 more months seemed both impossibly long and shockingly short. The parole hearing was held on a cold morning in March, 8 years almost to the day after Damien had walked into the FBI field office and confessed everything. He sat before a panel of 3 people who had the power to give him back his life or keep him locked away for 4 more years. "Mr. Vale," the panel chair said, reviewing his file, "you've served your time without incident. You've participated in rehabilitation programs. You've maintained steady communication with your family. And according to the Federal Bureau of Prisons, you've been a model inmate. Why should we grant your parole?" Damien had prepared for this question, had thought about it for months. But when the moment came, he abandoned the prepared speech and spoke from the heart. "Because I have a daughter who's 8 years old and barely knows me. She knows me from visits and phone calls and letters, but she's never had me tuck her into bed or help her with homework or teach her to ride a bike. And I know that's my fault. I know I created the situation that led to me being here. But I also know that I've spent 8 years thinking about what kind of father I want to be, what kind of husband I want to be, what kind of man I want to be, and I'm ready to prove I can be that person outside these walls. The panel deliberated for 3 hours. Damien waited in a holding cell, trying not to hope too hard, trying not to imagine what it would feel like to walk out into sunlight without guards or barriers or restrictions. When they finally called him back in, the panel chair's expression was unreadable. Mr. Vale, this panel has voted unanimously to grant your parole. You will be released next Friday with standard parole conditions, including regular check-ins with a parole officer, restrictions on travel, and continued cooperation with any ongoing federal investigations. Do you understand these conditions? I do. Then congratulations, Mr. Vale. Don't make us regret this decision. Damien was released on a Friday morning in late March, walking out of the federal facility into air that smelled like freedom and possibility. Vera was waiting with her car, but it was Tessa and Elena that Damien's eyes found immediately. Elena had grown so much in person, he almost didn't recognize her. She was tall for 8, with Tessa's dark hair and his gray eyes, wearing a dress that had flowers on it and shoes that lit up when she walked. She was also hiding behind Tessa's leg, suddenly shy in front of the father she'd only known through prison visits. "Hey, sweetheart," Damien said, kneeling down to her level. "Remember me?" Elena nodded solemnly. "You're my daddy. You were in time out." Despite everything, the years lost, the time he'd never get back, Damien laughed. "That's exactly what I was in, a very long time out. But I'm out now, and I promise I'm not going back. Mommy says you're going to live with us now. If that's okay with you." Elena considered this seriously. "Do you know how to make pancakes?" "I can learn. Do you like elephants?" "I love elephants." "Then I guess it's okay." Elena stepped out from behind Tessa and held out her hand. "I'm Elena May Vale. It's nice to meet you for real." Damien took her small hand in his, feeling his heart crack open and rebuild itself all at once. "It's nice to meet you too, Elena May Vale. I'm your dad, and I'm very happy to be home." They drove to the house Tessa had bought 3 years ago, a modest place in a good neighborhood with a yard big enough for Elena to play in, and a room that Tessa had kept ready for Damien's eventual return. It was nothing like the penthouse he'd lived in before prison, nothing like the empire he'd built and lost. It was perfect. That night, after Elena was in bed and Tessa had fallen asleep beside him, the first time they'd shared a bed in 8 years, Damien lay awake and thought about the phone call he'd received just before his release. It had been Agent Chen calling to tell him that his cooperation had led to 17 successful prosecutions and the dismantling of a criminal network that had operated for over a decade. "You paid your debt," she'd said. "Make sure it was worth it." Damien looked at Tessa sleeping peacefully, at the framed photos of Elena on the nightstand, at the life he'd fought so hard to protect and nearly destroyed in the process. He thought about the choices he'd made, pushing Tessa away, confessing to federal crimes, accepting responsibility for his actions. Each one had cost him something, but together they'd given him everything that mattered. "It was worth it," he whispered to the darkness. The next morning, he woke early and made breakfast, actual pancakes, which turned out to be harder than he'd expected, but still earned Elena's stamp of approval. He walked Elena to the bus stop for school, Tessa beside him, both of them just existing in the normalcy of suburban morning routines. When Elena's bus pulled away, Tessa turned to him. "What are you thinking about?" "I'm thinking about how I spent years building an empire, and it never made me as happy as walking my daughter to a bus stop." That's very philosophical for 8 in the morning. 8 years in prison gives you time to think. Damien took her hand as they walked back toward the house. "I want to do something that matters. I can't get my old businesses back. The legitimate ones were sold off to pay restitution and legal fees. But I still have some resources, some connections. What if we used them to help people?" "What kind of people?" "People like me. People who made mistakes and paid for them and are trying to rebuild their lives but can't get jobs because of their records. People who want to be better but keep getting doors slammed in their faces." Damien's mind was already forming the plan. "We could start a foundation, help with job placement, skills training, support services. Turn all the hard lessons I learned into something useful." Tessa was quiet for a moment, and he worried he'd overstepped, suggested something she couldn't support. But then she smiled, and it was the smile he remembered from before everything had gone wrong. I think that's exactly what you should do, and I think Elena would be proud to have a father who helps people instead of exploiting them. They spent the next month setting up the foundation, the Second Chance Initiative, Tessa had named it, with Vera handling the legal structure and Gideon managing the finances. It started small, just a few people they helped find jobs and housing, but word spread quickly in the community of formerly incarcerated people trying to rebuild. Within 6 months, they'd helped place 40 people in jobs. Within a year, they'd expanded to 3 cities. Within 2 years, the foundation was operating in 8 states and had helped over 200 people successfully reintegrate into society. Damien worked directly with many of them, sharing his own story, being honest about his mistakes and his consequences. He didn't hide his past or try to minimize what he'd done. He owned it completely, and in doing so, gave other people permission to own their pasts too. Elena grew up watching her father help people, watching him choose accountability over excuses, watching him build something meaningful from the ruins of his old life. On her 10th birthday, she announced that when she grew up, she wanted to help people too. Just like Daddy, she said, but without the prison part. That's an excellent plan, Damien told her. I highly recommend skipping the prison part. 10 years after his release, Damien was giving a speech at a criminal justice reform conference when his phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. Against his better judgment, he checked it during a break. It was from Patricia Alvarez. The message was simple. I saw what you built, the foundation, the work you're doing. I thought you should know that watching you turn your life around made me realize I needed to do the same. I'll be turning myself in to federal authorities next week, not looking for sympathy or forgiveness, just wanted you to know that accountability is contagious. Thanks for the reminder. Damien stared at the message for a long time, then showed it to Tessa, who was in the audience. Do you think she means it? Tessa asked. I think Patricia always means what she says. Whether she follows through is another question. Patricia did follow through. The news broke 2 weeks later. Patricia Alvarez, wanted for corporate espionage and fraud, had surrendered to federal authorities and was cooperating with an investigation into financial crimes in the tech sector. Her cooperation led to several high-profile arrests and eventually to a reduced sentence of her own. Damien never spoke to her directly, but he added her to the list of people the foundation would help when she was eventually released. Because that's what the foundation did. It helped people who'd made mistakes and were trying to do better. It helped people like him. Years later, on Elena's 18th birthday, Damien and Tessa took her to dinner at a nice restaurant downtown. She'd just been accepted to college, full scholarship to study social work, and was excitedly planning how she'd expand the foundation's work into youth programs. You know, Elena said as dessert arrived, I used to be embarrassed when kids at school found out my dad had been in prison. And now? Damien asked, already knowing the answer but wanting to hear her say it. Now I tell people that my dad made mistakes and owned them, that he chose accountability over running away, and that he spent the last 18 years proving that people can change if they want it badly enough. Elena smiled. I'm not embarrassed anymore, Dad. I'm proud. Damien felt Tessa's hand find his under the table, her fingers lacing through his the way they had 1,000 times over the past 18 years. They'd rebuilt their marriage slowly, carefully, with the kind of intentional honesty that only came from nearly losing everything. I'm proud of you too, he told Elena, and I'm grateful every single day that I made the choice to face my mistakes instead of running from them, because it brought me back to you and your mother. It gave me a second chance I didn't deserve but tried to earn anyway. That night, lying in bed beside Tessa in the same modest house they'd lived in for 18 years, Damien thought about the call that had started everything. 2:11 a.m. Tessa in labor, men at her door. He thought about the choices he'd made in the hours and days and years that followed. Some of them had been terrible. Some had been necessary. All of them had led to this moment. What are you thinking about? Tessa asked sleepily. I'm thinking about how I almost lost everything trying to protect it, Damien said, and how letting go of control turned out to be the only way to actually keep what mattered. Very zen for midnight, Tessa murmured, but she was smiling. I'm also thinking about how much I love you. How much I've always loved you, even when I was too stupid or scared to show it properly. I love you too, even when you're being philosophical instead of sleeping. Damien pulled her closer, breathing in the familiar scent of her hair, feeling her heartbeat against his chest. Outside, the world continued its chaotic spin. Businesses rose and fell, people made choices good and bad. Consequences rippled outward from every action. But here, in this moment, in this room, in this life they'd built from honesty and second chances and the stubborn refusal to give up on each other, everything was exactly as it should be. No threats at the door. No secrets poisoning the foundation. No running from the past or hiding from the future. Just a family that had survived the worst and chosen each other over and over again until choosing each other became as natural as breathing. Damien closed his eyes and for the first time in 26 years slept without fear. The fight was over. The war was won. And the peace, hard-earned, honestly built, fiercely protected, was finally, truly theirs to keep.